Chapter 79. Qin Feiyang followed Luo Xiong and the other two up to the stage. He turned around and looked at Ling Sheng. He really couldn't understand why this person was so arrogant. Fatso didn't go up. He knew that with his identity and status, he wasn't qualified to stand on the stage. However, in the eyes of some people, Qin Feiyang wasn't qualified either. Jiang Haotian, get down! The Ling family head shouted. His son hadn't stopped yet, and his father had come to interfere. It seemed like the father and son wouldn't let this go. Qin Feiyang asked, "Why should I go down? Take a look yourself. Who here isn't someone with status and status? You're just a little martial master. What qualifications do you have to be on equal footing with everyone?" The Ling family head said with disdain. "That's reasonable." The martial arts hall master nodded and said indifferently, "Jiang Haotian, you should know your limits. Get down." The city lord said angrily, "You have no manners at all. Luo Xiong, how did you educate your disciple?" Luo Xiong laughed and said, "How I educate my disciple is my pill hall's business. You don't have to worry about it. However, old Feng, old Mo and I are very satisfied with this disciple." Feng Cheng and old Mo looked at each other and smiled. "Jiang Haotian, ignore them. Come and stand behind me." Elder Mo waved at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Elder. However, I'm afraid I'll need a chair today." "How dare you? A mere disciple actually wants a chair. What wishful thinking. It seems like you're not only unruly, you're also uneducated." All the family heads shouted angrily. Educated. Hearing these two words, Qin Feiyang's body trembled. His entire temperament changed instantly. He was like an enraged lion, his hair fluttering in the wind as he looked around and sneered. "I think you guys are the ones with no manners and manners. What did you say? I dare you to say it again." Those patriarchs glared angrily. If it weren't for the presence of Luo Xiong and the other two, they would have already attacked Qin Feiyang. "I said, you guys are the ones who have no manners." Qin Feiyang said word by word. "How preposterous. City Lord, this brat has no respect for his elders. I suggest that we expel him immediately." All the family heads turned to look at the city lord. The city lord's gaze turned cold and he said in a solemn voice, "Jiang Haotian, if you don't give this city lord a satisfactory explanation today, don't think about leaving here." Qin Feiyang said, "It just so happens that I also need an explanation. May I ask why everyone is gathered here today?" The city lord said, "Nonsense. Of course I'm here to watch the battle between Ling Sheng and Ling Yunfei." "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded and said, "If I may be so bold as to ask again, who issued the letter of challenge, and who signed the life and death agreement?" The city lord frowned, not understanding why Qin Feiyang asked such a question, and said, "It's you." "Yes, I issued the letter of challenge, and I signed the life and death agreement. I'm equivalent to Ling Yunfei's guarantor. Why can't you prepare a chair for me? And why can't you let me come up? If even I, the guarantor, am not qualified to come up, then what qualifications do you unrelated people have? I want to ask, what does it have to do with you? Are you all too free? If you want to watch the show, get down and watch, okay?" Qin Feiyang scolded him on the spot. So what if he was the city lord? So what if he was the patriarch? Did he think that he was easy to bully because he was weak? Causing trouble for him everywhere? Embarrassing him? Let me tell you, no way. Although he was in dire straits now, he had not fallen to the point where he could be bullied by anyone. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and regained his calm. He turned to look at the Ling family head and said indifferently, "You are also Ling Sheng's guarantor. If I don't have the qualifications to sit here, then shouldn't you also get lost?" The Ling family had clenched his fists, and his eyes were extremely gloomy. The city lord, the martial arts hall master, and the other family heads were even more furious. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, they were actually scolded by a junior. What a joke. Although the people below the stage felt that Qin Feiyang was a little arrogant, what he said was very reasonable. This was a personal grudge between Jiang Haotian and the Ling family. The unrelated people should retreat to the side and watch silently. But now they were all speaking with conviction, and putting on an attitude as if they were the most important person in the world. They really had nothing better to do, asking for a scolding. Qin Feiyang looked at Luo Xiong and the precious treasure pavilion master, cupped his hands and said, "You two are the most impartial people in Black Bear City. Tell me, who is the one here who has no rules?" Bastard with an impure heart. The two cursed in their hearts. This little bastard was simply a human. After thinking for a while, the pavilion master smiled and said, "If it was in a normal situation, Jiang Haotian would not be qualified to be on equal footing with us in public. But now he is the party involved. Let's put it this way, he is now the host, and we are the people he invited to watch the show. We are indeed not qualified to say anything. He should have a seat." Luo Xiong only said this one sentence, but it was enough to express his position. Qin Feiyang looked at the city lord again and said with a smile, "City lord, what do you think? I know that you can't wait to strangle me to death, but justice is in people's hearts. If you are not afraid of others gossiping behind your back, then go ahead and do it." "Great. Boss is indeed the boss. Boss, keep it up." Ga. In the silent crowd a loud roar suddenly sounded. Fatso was standing in the front row, jumping up and down as if he was injected with chicken blood, laughing weirdly. Is this damn Fatso looking for death? Everyone looked over, and their faces became extremely strange. Cough cough. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly. Fatso quivered. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, he suddenly broke out in cold sweat. His face turned pale, and he hurriedly lowered his head, not daring to breathe loudly. After talking for so long, is anyone going to bring me a chair? Qin Feiyang roared. He once again became the focus of the crowd. The city lord's face was gloomy, and he shouted, "Bring him a chair." A guard hurriedly took out a chair from his Qinkuan bag and asked, "Where is it?" Qin Feiyang sighed and said, "Originally, I was the party involved and should sit in the middle, but everyone here is a senior, so I can only suffer and sit to the side." Suffer? Senior? Hearing this, everyone was speechless. When you pointed at their noses and scolded them just now, why didn't you treat them as seniors? For a chair, you caused such a commotion here, and you call it suffering? You have said good things, and you have also said bad things. What else can you do? You can't be so shameless. That guard was also speechless to the extreme. He had seen people who were not afraid of death, but it was the first time he met someone who was seeking death. After this matter, there was no possibility of turning back the key between this person and the city lord. After placing the chair, that guard retreated to the side. Qin Feiyang grinned, walked over boldly, and sat on the chair. He said with satisfaction, "Great, this is the treatment that should be given. City lord, thank you." The city lord immediately turned his head and privately chatted with the martial arts hall master. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and looked at Fatso. Fatso immediately gave him a thumbs up. "Jiang Haotian, where is Ling Yunfei? He hasn't appeared yet. Could it be that he is scared silly by me and doesn't dare to come?" At this moment, Ling Sheng sneered. "What's the hurry? Before he comes, calm down. With your current state, I can kill you in one move." Qin Feiyang said faintly. This person was too conceited, too arrogant, and a standard playboy. If it wasn't because he wanted to save Ling Yunfei's mother, he would feel that it was a waste of time to even look at him. That's right. Ling Yunfei's mother? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and looked at the Ling family head. He found that the Ling family head was looking at the Black Bear Mountain, frowning slightly and looking a little irritated. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and asked, "Ling family head, are you wondering why housekeeper Ling hasn't come back yet?" How did he know? The Ling family head was shocked. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "On the night of the letter of challenge, I accidentally saw housekeeper Ling sneaking out of the city and entering the Black Bear Mountain. I was curious. Why did he go to the Black Bear Mountain?" "Ling family head, do you know?" The Ling family head said in a deep voice. "I don't know." Qin Feiyang said playfully, "Who in the Black Bear City doesn't know that housekeeper Ling is your confidant? How could you not know?" "If I say I don't know, then I don't know. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" The Ling family head shouted angrily, but an uneasy premonition arose in his heart. The city lord and the others also stopped their discussion and looked at the two of them thoughtfully. It seemed that there were still many things that no one knew about. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, Okay, I won't talk nonsense, but I want to ask, where is Ling Yunfei's mother? Why isn't she present? The Ling family head said disdainfully. Haste makes waste, let's wait for Ling Yunfei to win first. I'm afraid that when the time comes, you'll go back on your word. At this moment, a cold voice sounded. The world seemed to have entered a cold winter, and everyone felt an inexplicable chill. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked. He saw a blood-colored figure behind the crowd. Who else could it be but Ling Yunfei? He was like an Azura returning. His body was filled with a monstrous killing intent and hostility. However, the Ling family head and a group of Ling family elders all stood up suddenly. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Because on Ling Yunfei's shoulder, there was a person. It was the person they were worried about, Steward Ling. The crowd hurriedly separated. Ling Yunfei walked towards the high platform step by step, his body emitting a pungent smell of blood, causing the surrounding crowd to panic. Swoosh! He jumped and landed on the high platform. First, he placed Steward Ling in front of the Ling family, then stood beside Qin Feiyang, his eyes staring at Steward Ling, like an awakening beast. It was quite terrifying. The Ling family had squatted on the ground, stretched out his finger, and placed it in front of Steward Ling's nose. Immediately, his arm trembled, and he looked up at Ling Yunfei angrily and shouted, "Did you kill him?" Ling Yunfei said, "Before you speak, think first. I'm a martial master. How can I kill a martial great master? It was just a coincidence. I couldn't bear to see his corpse in the wilderness, so I brought him back. You should thank me." He no longer had any feelings for the Ling family, only hatred, because if it wasn't for the Black Bear King's help, he would have died in Steward Ling's hands. Actually, he didn't know that the one who had been helping him was Wolf King. Luo Xiong looked at Steward Ling's injuries and said, "He did die in the hands of a beast, and it was the Black Bear King who killed him, because there are wounds on his body caused by the Black Bear King's claws. Ling family head, your guts are really big, you actually dared to provoke it." The latter half of the sentence was filled with sarcasm. The Ling family had clenched his fists, making a cracking sound. Not only did Ling Yunfei not kill him, but he also lost a martial great master. How could he not be angry? He also knew that things were not so simple. But he had to endure it. Because once everyone knew about his despicable deeds, not only him, but the Ling family would become the target of public criticism. At that time, even the city lord might not protect him. But he couldn't let this matter rest. He raised his head and looked at Ling Sheng, his eyes filled with murderous intent. "Sure, let's begin." Ling Sheng nodded and turned to Ling Yunfei, shouting, "Get over here and accept your death." Qin Feiyang asked, "Are you confident?" "Just watch." Ling Yunfei smiled coldly and walked to the center of the stage, standing opposite Ling Sheng. There was only a distance of 5 meters between the two. Ling Yunfei said, "Can I kill people?" Ling Sheng said, "After signing the life and death agreement, of course you can kill people. I don't want you to leave this stage alive." Chapter 80. Ling Yunfei clenched his fists. The resentment in his heart that had been suppressed for more than 10 years turned into a monstrous rage that spread rapidly. Bang! The two of them stomped on the ground and charged at each other like two wild bulls. He clenched his fists. He threw a punch at his opponent. Boom! The two fists collided violently. A shocking wave of air emerged, with the two of them as the center, rolling in all directions. At the same time, there was a muffled groan. Ling Sheng staggered and retreated continuously. His face instantly turned pale. What? Seeing this scene, everyone present was dumbfounded and filled with disbelief. Especially the people of the Ling family. Their mouths were opened so wide that an egg could be stuffed in. How could this be? After Ling Sheng stabilized his body, he looked at Ling Yunfei in disbelief. They were in the same family and had been together for more than 10 years. He was confident that no one knew this person better than him. Not only was he a good-for-nothing, but he was also timid and incompetent. But at this moment, not only did he dare to fight with him, he even forced him to retreat with one move. This completely overturned his understanding of the world. Although this was only the first meeting, everyone's hearts were in turmoil at this moment. They were unable to calm down. Only Qin Feiyang was watching quietly. He was not surprised at all. Everything was within his expectations. Ling Yunfei flicked his sleeves and stood straight like a javelin. He looked at Ling Sheng for a moment and said, "If I'm not wrong, you didn't use your full strength just now because you wanted to torture me and make me wish I was dead." At this moment, everyone could clearly feel that this person had completely changed. He was no longer the little sheep in the past. He was now an awakened lion that bared his fangs. "So you've been hiding your strength." Ling Sheng's face was gloomy. That's right. Previously, he did not use his full strength because he was afraid that he would kill Ling Yunfei with one punch. That would be too easy for him. But he did not expect that the other party had hidden his strength. This made him suffer a great loss. In fact, it did not matter if he suffered a loss. The most important thing was that he lost face. The corners of Ling Yunfei's lips curled up into an evil smile. He said with disdain, "The Ling clan, including you, have always thought that you know me very well. But do you really know me? Don't think that you can boast shamelessly just because you're a 4-star martial master. Let me tell you, you're not qualified." Ling Sheng was infuriated as he charged forward. True Qi surged from his palm as he sent a palm strike at Ling Yunfei. This time he didn't hold back. He no longer dared to hold back. "Whether or not I'm qualified, we'll see." Ling Yunfei didn't dodge at all. Instead, he raised his arm and struck out with his palm. Bang! True Qi like dragons collided with each other with a loud bang. The two of them retreated at the same time, blood flowing out from the corners of their mouths. Neck and neck. Ling family head's heart skipped a beat as he shouted, "Ling Sheng, what are you doing? Stop hiding your strength and kill him." Hiding his strength? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. "Ling Yunfei, I wanted to torture you, but I have no choice. I can't disobey my father's orders." As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Sheng's body trembled as a terrifying aura emanated from his body. His robes and long hair fluttered in the wind, making him look rather imposing. He's a 5-star martial master. I didn't expect him to hide his strength as well. He's only 18, right? In a small city like Black Bear City, there are only a handful of 18-year-old 5-star martial masters. With Ling Sheng's current strength, he's already strong enough to dominate the younger generation. His future is limitless. Everyone was shocked as they discussed. The martial arts hall master's eyes flashed as he turned to look at Ling family head and said, "I agree to your request to remove Ling Yunfei's qualification and let Ling Sheng enter the martial arts hall." "Thank you, hall master." Ling family head hurriedly stood up and thanked him. Frog in the well. Qin Feiyang didn't hide his sarcasm. And the martial arts hall master frowned as he turned to look at Qin Feiyang with hostility. "Jiang Haoyan, don't say that the grapes are sour because you can't eat them. There are some things that you can't be jealous of," Ling family head said indifferently as he returned to his seat, his eyes full of contempt. An 18-year-old 5-star martial master, or a 16-year-old 4-star martial master? Which one is more promising and more valuable? I believe that anyone with a clear head would be able to figure this out. Qin Feiyang laughed. The martial arts hall master clenched his fists as his face was filled with anger. These words were basically hinting that he had no foresight and was already muddle-headed. "I'll deal with you later." Ling Sheng glanced at Qin Feiyang as his eyes flashed coldly. He then looked at Ling Yunfei and said disdainfully, "Did you see that? This is the difference between you and me." Ling Yunfei nodded and said seriously, "The difference is indeed huge. Since you know that, then you should obediently submit yourself to capture." Ling Sheng walked towards Ling Yunfei in an imposing manner. The disdain on his face was even thicker. He thought that after seeing his true cultivation, Ling Feiyang would give up resisting. Therefore he acted very arrogant and cocky, his nostrils almost reaching the sky. Qin Feiyang laughed. Ling Yunfei laughed as well. This person was not just arrogant in the ordinary sense. However, there was a price to pay for being arrogant. Ling Yunfei took a step forward. His speed was actually several times faster than before. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Ling Sheng. His big hand reached out without hesitation and slapped towards Ling Sheng's chest. Puff. Ah. Bang. On the spot. Ling Sheng was sent flying by the slap. He spat out blood and screamed as he landed heavily on the ground more than 10 meters away. Crack. The place immediately shattered like a spider web. Sheng. Ling family head stood up and looked at Ling Sheng worriedly. At the same time, he was extremely surprised. How could Ling Yunfei's speed be so fast? Many people could not figure it out. It's an auxiliary martial technique. However, suddenly, the martial arts hall master exclaimed and stood up abruptly. He looked at Ling Yunfei in disbelief. What? Auxiliary martial technique? What kind of joke is this? The auxiliary martial technique is extremely rare. The entire Black Bear City does not have it. How could Ling Yunfei have it? I don't believe it. I don't believe it either. The place was instantly in an uproar. The crowd's clamor resounded throughout the place. Although it's hard to believe, the footwork he used just now is indeed an auxiliary martial technique. Looking at his speed, its grade is not low. The pavilion master said thoughtfully. Suddenly, he turned to look at Qin Feiyang. Seeing Qin Feiyang's calm expression, he was not surprised at all. He could not help but be stunned. Then, as if he had figured something out, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. Kid, I still underestimated you. Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang. Could it be that this matter had something to do with him? You're actually a 5-star martial master too. At this moment, a voice filled with shock exploded like a clap of thunder. Who's a 5-star martial master? Everyone was stunned and looked at Ling Yunfei and Ling Sheng. They saw Ling Sheng climb up from the ground and stare at Ling Yunfei opposite him. His pale face was full of disbelief. Could it be that he's talking about Ling Yunfei? Everyone was surprised. Ling Sheng's face gradually became incomparably ferocious. He gritted his teeth and said, I really didn't expect you to hide so deeply. Mother told me that if I want to survive in the Ling family, I have to endure. So since I was sensible, I've been enduring. You insulted me. I endured. You took away my things. I endured. You didn't give me martial techniques, didn't give me resources, and didn't even give me food. I still endured. I thought that my tolerance would make you restrain yourself and treat me better. But I was wrong. Not only did my tolerance not have any effect, but it also increased your arrogance. I have to say that human nature is to bully the weak and fear the strong. Ling Yunfei said. Whether it was his tone or his eyes, they were filled with endless heartache and pain, with a trace of self-mockery. Bullying the weak and fearing the strong. What a joke! Do you think you're really strong? Don't be so self-righteous. In my eyes, you're not even comparable to an ant. Go to hell. Ling Sheng roared and rushed towards Ling Yunfei, full of murderous intent. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly. He looked at Ling Yunfei and shouted, Show your full combat strength and let those who look down on you regret it. They will definitely regret it. Ling Yunfei smiled coldly. Carrying a terrifying murderous intent, he rushed towards Ling Sheng. Both of them were furious and full of murderous intent. Boom. In an instant, they met. Moo. Ling Sheng punched out. The fist wind was like the roar of a bull, extremely fierce. It was the bull fist. Ling Yunfei used the essence convergence steps and dodged it easily. Heartlock killing fist. Then, with a roar, he punched Ling Sheng's chest. This punch, it seemed to have no strength at all. Not only was Ling Sheng not pushed back, he was not injured at all. What bullshit killing fist, it's worse than trash. Ling Sheng sneered, his eyes full of disdain. Wah. But the next moment, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His pupils rapidly dilated, and with a bang he fell to the ground. At that moment, he died. What? Dead? Everyone was dumbfounded. Ling Yunfei lowered his arm, looked down at Ling Sheng, who had died with his eyes wide open, and mocked. You didn't understand what I meant just now. I was saying that the gap between you and me is indeed quite big. After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked to Qin Feiyang's side. He raised his head and looked at the people of the Ling family with a bone-chilling gaze. The scene was dead silent. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take a look. The Ling family head suddenly shouted. Several clan elders immediately ran to the center of the high platform. When they looked down, their faces turned pale. Patriarch Sheng was really killed by him. An elder turned his head with difficulty and said to the Ling family head. As soon as these words came out, the audience was in an uproar. The Ling family head was like a bolt from the blue, and he was stunned on the spot. Gradually, his body trembled violently. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked at Ling Yunfei and Qin Feiyang, his eyes bursting with bone-chilling killing intent. Little beast, I'm going to kill you and bury you with Shang. With a sorrowful roar, he rushed towards the two of them like a madman. His face was distorted and looked extremely ferocious. At the same time, the other elders also pounced towards the two of them. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and shouted, "What? Are you not following the rules?" He suddenly stood up and stood in front of Ling Yunfei. This move tugged at everyone's heartstrings. Chapter 81. However, that was not the case. Qin Feiyang knew his limits. The Ling family head and a few of the clan elders were all martial arts grandmasters. With his current strength, it was not enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. He did this to let Luo Xiong and the other two take action. As expected, seeing him standing in front of Ling Yunfei, Luo Xiong and the other two's faces changed. Crash! Streaks of dazzling battle chi surged out from their bodies like a torrent. They covered the sky above the stage and emitted a destructive aura. Whoever dares to move will be killed without mercy. Luo Xiong roared. The Ling family head and the other elders trembled and stopped in their tracks. They looked at the battle chi above their heads in fear. Their bodies were drenched in cold sweat. Qin Feiyang secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He turned around and looked at the city lord. Seeing that the city lord was indifferent, he frowned and said, "City lord, you wrote the life and death agreement yourself. Are you not going to say anything? Are you going to side with the Ling family? I want to check it out personally." The city lord stood up and walked towards Ling Sheng. His face was ugly. This was not the result he wanted. In these 3 days, he had never worried, nor had he ever thought that Ling Sheng would be defeated. He had even planned how to teach Qin Feiyang a lesson after Ling Sheng won. However, everything was a mess now. He did not know what to do. He came in front of Ling Sheng and looked carefully. Suddenly, a trace of doubt appeared in his eyes. However, gradually, the doubt disappeared and was replaced by horror. How is this possible? The heart is actually broken. Finally, he could not help but exclaim. What? All the leaders and family heads were shocked. They went forward to check. It is really broken. Everyone was dumbfounded. There weren't any external wounds on his chest, but his heart was already torn apart. Wasn't this too strange? Was this the legendary hitting a bull through a mountain? The martial arts hall master turned to look at Ling Yunfei. His eyes were shining as he asked, "When did you master this martial skill?" "I don't know," Ling Yunfei said expressionlessly. The martial arts hall master was too hypocritical. Be it Qin Feiyang or Ling Yunfei, Jiang Yi didn't have a good impression of him, and even felt disgusted. However, the martial arts hall master turned a blind eye to such an attitude, and a smile crept onto his face. Seeing this, the Ling family head felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly bowed and begged, "Hall master, I beg you please help Sheng." The martial arts hall master frowned and said unhappily, "Why should this hall master stand up for him?" The Ling clan head was anxious and said, "Hall master, he is now a disciple of the martial arts hall. You promised him yourself." "I did agree to it, but he hasn't officially entered the martial arts hall. He can't be considered a disciple of the martial arts hall. Besides, you've already signed the life and death agreement. You should accept your loss. Stop looking for trouble with Ling Yunfei. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite," the martial arts hall master said coldly. The Ling family head's face turned ashen on the spot. If he didn't care, then so be it. He didn't expect that he would be threatened. What was this? Just ask. Was such a person worthy of being the martial arts hall master? However, no matter how much resentment he had in his stomach, he could only endure it. Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei looked at each other when they saw Ling family head's sorry state. A trace of ridicule crept into their eyes. Which of these big shots wasn't snobbish? If you had value, he would help you. If you had no value, who were you? Why should he help you? Get lost as far as you can. This was the most realistic problem. Therefore, if you wanted to be valued, you had to work hard to prove your value. Qin Feiyang whispered. If nothing goes wrong, the martial arts hall master will definitely invite you to join the martial arts hall. As expected. Before his voice faded away, the martial arts hall master looked at Ling Yunfei and smiled. I am deeply sorry for what happened before. I now solemnly invite you to join the martial arts hall. I promise you, as long as you agree, the martial arts hall's only reserved quota will be yours. After these words were spoken, everyone was in an uproar again. However, those people from the Ling clan looked as if they had eaten dog poop. Their faces were extremely ugly, because once Ling Yunfei agreed, he was destined to soar to the sky. That meant that Ling Yunfei would be completely out of their control. They would even have to look up to him and respect him. This was extremely disadvantageous to them. However, Ling Yunfei was hesitating. Although he hated the martial arts hall master, joining the martial arts hall was something he had always desired. But now he had to consider Qin Feiyang. Without Qin Feiyang's help, he would still be that cowardly trash and wouldn't have his current achievements. If he agreed to the martial arts hall master's invitation, it would be equivalent to burning the bridge after crossing the river. Suddenly, he laughed at himself. What was there to hesitate about? Shouldn't a person know how to repay kindness? With this thought, he looked up at the martial arts hall master and shook his head. Sorry, I will not join the martial arts hall. I have already promised Jiang Haoyan that I will be his sword for life. Rejected? Everyone was surprised. He actually rejected such a tempting offer? What was so great about this Jiang Haoyan? How could such a genius be willing to follow him for life? This was also the doubt in the hearts of all the tycoons. However, the martial arts hall master was very angry. He had already said good words and helped him, but he didn't expect that he would still be rejected. And it was only because of a 4-star martial master. Could a mere 4-star martial master be compared to the martial arts hall? No way. It was like the difference between clouds and mud. But Ling Yunfei chose this pile of mud. This was simply humiliating him and the martial arts hall. As for Qin Feiyang, he was naturally very happy, because this proved that he didn't misjudge Jiang Haoyan. However, he smiled and said, Ling Yunfei, go to the martial arts hall. The Martial King Hall is your stage. Go and show your talent to your heart's content. What? Ling Yunfei was stunned. The others were also stunned. I mean what I say. Don't test me. Ling Yunfei was a little unhappy. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, I'm not testing you. I sincerely hope that you can enter the Martial King Hall. Seeing that Ling Yunfei still didn't believe him, he smiled helplessly and looked at the martial arts hall master. I agree on his behalf. I hope you can treat him well. Of course. The martial arts hall master smiled. For the first time, he found that this kid was quite pleasing to the eye. Why? Ling Yunfei looked at Qin Feiyang and asked. How can there be so many whys in the world? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He turned to the Ling family head and said, Now can you hand over Ling Yunfei's mother to us? Mentioning this, Ling Yunfei immediately put down the doubts in his heart and turned to stare at the Ling family. Family head, what should we do? A group of elders looked at the Ling family head anxiously. The Ling family head was also very anxious and racked his brains to think of a plan. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. Don't worry. I still have a trick up my sleeve. I guarantee that Jiang Haoyan will never be able to make a comeback. He whispered to the elders and looked at the city lord. He cupped his hands and said, City lord, there's something I need to report to you. What is it? The city lord frowned. The Ling family head said, 3 days ago, Jiang Haoyan killed 2 city guards called Zhao Lu and Li Qi. Indeed, he wants to frame me. Qin Feiyang sneered secretly. Really? The city lord didn't ask for the reason. He only asked if it was true or not. It was enough to show that he still wanted to deal with Qin Feiyang. The Ling family had nodded and said, It's true. I can guarantee it with my life. I also know that their bodies are buried outside the pill hall. The city lord's eyes flashed. He shouted, Bring me there immediately. The Ling family had turned around and muttered to the elders. Those elders nodded and carried housekeeper Ling and Ling Sheng's bodies. They quickly entered the city and disappeared. Why did you let them leave first? Qin Feiyang mumbled. His eyes were filled with thoughts. There was no need to be so impatient to bury Ling Sheng and housekeeper Ling's bodies, right? If it was during normal times, he wouldn't doubt it. However, it was a special time now. It wasn't normal to let a group of elders leave first. The Ling family had glanced at Qin Feiyang and sneered. He then looked at the city lord and bowed. City lord, please. The city lord looked at Luo Xiong and said, let's go together. All right. Luo Xiong frowned and nodded. The Ling family had left quickly with the other leaders. Feng Qing came to Qin Feiyang's side and asked in a low voice, are you going to do it or not? Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Elder Feng, just wait and see. Brat, you're being so mysterious. All right, I'll wait and see. However, you have to follow me closely now. I'm worried that the Ling family will do something desperate and might plot against you. Feng Qing whispered. He then looked at Ling Yunfei and said, you too. The two nodded and followed Feng Qing to the city gate. Ling Yunfei said, you must have your reasons for asking me to go to the martial arts hall. There's no reason. I'm just worried that I can't afford to raise you. Qin Feiyang said half-jokingly. Ling Yunfei's face darkened. He wasn't a woman. Why would he need to be raised? Jiang Laoda, wait for me. At this moment, Fatso squeezed out of the crowd and ran to Qin Feiyang's side. He laughed and said, Boss, you're so awesome. You're Fat Lord's idol. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. Suddenly he had an idea. He whispered, Fat Lord, do me a favor. What favor? Fatso was stunned and asked. Qin Feiyang whispered in Fatso's ear. Really? Fatso was surprised after hearing it. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, I'm just guessing. I can't be sure. However, it's hard to predict a person's mind. It's necessary to take precautions. Go quickly. After you're done, I'll give you dozens of supreme-grade elixirs. No problem. Leave it to Fat Lord. Fatso's eyes lit up. He patted his chest and vowed. Then he squeezed into the crowd and ran into the city in front of everyone. He disappeared without looking back. Ling Yunfei was puzzled. What did you ask Fatso to do? Just in case. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and asked, do you still have feelings for the Ling family? Ling Yunfei said, 3 days ago, I did have some feelings. However, when I saw Butler Ling enter the Black Bear Mountain to kill me, all feelings were gone. After saving my mother, I will have nothing to do with the Ling family. That's good. Qin Feiyang nodded while strands of bright light flickered in the depths of his eyes. Chapter 82. A few hundred breaths later. A group of people arrived at the entrance of the pill hall. The city lord looked around and asked, where are the corpses? To be honest, the Ling family head didn't know the exact location, because only Butler Ling and Qin Feiyang were there when they were buried. Hurry up and search. See if there are any traces of digging. The Ling family head waved his hand. Dozens of Ling family disciples immediately spread out and started a carpet search. Zhao Lu and Li Qi's corpses were originally buried outside the entrance. Therefore, soon he found some clues. However, when the Ling family people dug up the soil, they were dumbfounded. There was nothing. How did this happen? The Ling family had stood beside the deep pit, dumbfounded. Luo Xiong snorted. Ling family head, tell me, where are the corpses? The Ling family head quivered and shouted to the dozens of disciples. They must be here. Continue digging and searching. Luo Xiong said, I'll say this first. If you can't find their corpses today, your Ling family will be removed from Black Bear City. The Ling family head's body trembled. The city lord raised his eyebrows and said, Luo Xiong, it's not that serious, right? Luo Xiong sneered. He slandered my pill hall's disciples. It's equivalent to damaging my pill hall's reputation. He's challenging my pill hall's dignity. Isn't that serious? The city lord frowned deeper and deeper. At this moment, Qin Feiyang took a step forward and looked at the Ling family head playfully. Everyone, the person who killed Zhao Lu and Li Qi is actually Butler Ling. A bunch of nonsense. The Ling family had immediately shouted. If you don't do anything wrong, You won't be afraid of ghosts knocking on your door. Why are you so agitated? Qin Feiyang sneered. Jiang Haoyan, do you have proof? Luo Xiong asked. Yes, everyone, follow me to the Ling family. Qin Feiyang turned and left. Everyone followed him. The Ling family head was surprised. But when he thought of what he told Butler Ling, his uneasy heart calmed down. He snorted. I want to see what proof you have. You guys continue to search nearby. I'll follow them back. After instructing the disciples of the clan, he quickly chased after them. When they arrived at the Ling residence, only a few big shots from Black Bear City went in. The others gathered outside, waiting for news. Qin Feiyang looked around the entire way, looking for that fake mountain. After all, he had only been to the Ling family twice, and both times were late at night. Naturally, he wasn't familiar with the layout and environment of the Ling family. Ling family had said coldly, if you can't find him, you must give me an explanation today. You're really forgetful. Let me remind you out of kindness. You're the one who slandered me first. Even if you don't find her, we'll just call it even. Qin Feiyang said lightly. Even? What a delusion. Ling family had sneered secretly. Several hundred breaths passed. Qin Feiyang finally found the rockery. Thus, he led everyone to the back of the rockery. Luo Xiong asked, is Jiang Haoyan here? Qin Feiyang nodded. Old Feng. Luo Xiong shouted. Feng Cheng waved his hand, and his battle qi gushed out, causing the soil to churn. It stinks. It's the smell of corpses. Before the corpses appeared, a pungent smell of corpses was emitted from the soil first. How could it be? Ling family head's eyes trembled as he stared at the pit. As the soil continued to reduce, the two corpses gradually appeared in everyone's sight. 3 days had passed, and under the hot weather, the corpses had begun to rot. How could this be? Ling family had muttered to himself, full of disbelief. The city lord's eyes darkened as he turned to look at him and shouted, what explanation do you have? Ling family had quivered and hurriedly said, City lord, this is framing. Jiang Haoyan is framing me. Please investigate. The city lord frowned and turned to look at Luo Xiong, saying, it seems that it's not impossible. Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold as he said, the evidence is here, and you still say that I'm framing you? City lord, how much did you receive from the Ling family to protect them like this? How dare you? The city lord shouted, his eyes extremely unfriendly. What? You want to fight? Feng Cheng stood in front of Qin Feiyang, his old eyes flashing with cold light. Luo Xiong and Elder Mo also released their aura, ready to fight. The martial arts hall master glanced at Ling Yunfei, his eyes flashing slightly. He looked at the city lord and laughed. Now that we have the evidence, you still speak for the Ling family. This is indeed too much. The precious treasure pavilion master said, I think so too. The city lord's heart trembled. He never expected that even the two giants, the martial arts hall and the precious treasure pavilion, would stand with Qin Feiyang. He finally understood why Qin Feiyang would let Ling Yunfei join the martial arts hall. Because once Ling Yunfei joined the martial arts hall, with his outstanding talent, the martial arts hall master would definitely protect him like a treasure. Ling Yunfei and Qin Feiyang had a good relationship. Once there was a conflict, the martial arts hall master would naturally stand with the two of them. Who would have thought? A youth who wasn't even 16 years old had such terrifying scheming. Just thinking about it made his scalp numb. This kid's threat was too big. He must be killed in the cradle. Murderous intent surged in his heart. He looked at Luo Xiong and the others and said, all right, tell me. If Jiang Haoyan didn't kill him, how did he know the corpse was buried here? Qin Feiyang was so angry that he laughed and said, what a joke. When the Ling family head was slandering me, why didn't you ask him this? City lord, do you really want to get rid of me so badly? The city lord said, it was this city lord who neglected this point. Feng Cheng clenched his fists and said angrily, Jiang Haoyan, just tell him. Elder Mo said, that's right. If someone wants to cover the sky with one hand, he has to ask the pill hall first. The city lord's eyes darkened. He could clearly feel that the three giants of the pill hall were very unhappy with him. Qin Feiyang said, all right, I'll tell you. You should all remember that night, after we signed the life and death agreement. We left the Ling family directly. Everyone nodded. Qin Feiyang continued. After leaving the Ling family, I sent Ling Yunfei to the Black Bear Mountain to train. When I came back, I saw Butler Ling killing Zhao Lu and Li Qi. Out of curiosity, I followed him. I saw him carrying the 2 corpses and entering the Ling family. He didn't go through the main door, but sneakily climbed over the wall. This made me even more curious. So, I followed him into the Ling family and continued to follow him. In the end, I saw him coming here and burying the corpses with my own eyes. Qin Feiyang said until here. The Ling family had suddenly roared. Impossible. I clearly told him to frame you, he. Qin Feiyang laughed. His lips curled into a mocking smile. The eyes of the giants instantly turned cold. Feeling the change in the atmosphere, the Ling family had immediately realized that he had said something wrong. He hurriedly explained, City Lord, what I mean is, enough. The City Lord shouted. The Ling family head's body shook and his face turned pale. The City Lord said expressionlessly, not only did you kill the guards, but you also framed Jiang Haoyan. You are so vicious that you don't deserve to be a human. Now, I officially announce that the Ling family will be removed from the Black Bear City. What? The Ling family head's body and mind trembled. It was like a bolt from the blue, and his mind was buzzing. The City Lord was also helpless, because if he didn't deal with it impartially, Luo Xiong would definitely make a fuss. Once the Yen King was alarmed, his position as the City Lord would be difficult to keep. Phew. It's really refreshing. Qin Feiyang let out a long breath. There was no pity in his expression, because all of this was the Ling family's own fault. But suddenly, he frowned and said, Ling family head, how long are you going to drag it out? Drag it out. Ling Yunfei was stunned and instantly understood Qin Feiyang's meaning. He hurriedly shouted, Give my mother back to me. Give it back to you? Haha. The Ling family had laughed out loud as if he had gone mad. Bastard, I'll kill you. Ling Yunfei's heart suddenly burst into a monstrous rage. He opened his hands and pounced towards the Ling family head. Come on. I can use you to escape. The Ling family head sneered in his heart. But Qin Feiyang was quick-witted and grabbed Ling Yunfei's arm. Calm down, you're not his opponent. He can't wait for you to rush up now, because as long as he captures you, he can use you to threaten us. At that time, not only will we not be able to save your mother, even you will die. Hearing these words, Ling Yunfei was suddenly enlightened and sobered up. However, the Ling family head's face became incomparably ferocious. He stared at Qin Feiyang and roared. Who exactly are you? Why are you interfering in my Ling family's private affairs? Qin Feiyang said indifferently. I don't have any hobbies, I just like to fight for justice. Hee. The Ling family had laughed and mocked. Unfortunately, it's too late. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. I've already sent people to take Ling Yunfei's mother away. She has already left Black Bear City. Bastard, I knew your words couldn't be trusted. Ling Yunfei was immediately furious, and his killing intent soared to the sky. There is indeed a problem, Qin Feiyang whispered. However, want to run? How could it be so easy? The martial arts hall master walked to Ling Yunfei's side and comforted him. Yunfei, don't worry, I'll send people to find her immediately. Can you find her? Ling Yunfei was in a daze, and his eyes were filled with despair. Everyone was silent. Although their cultivation was not low, once the Ling family left Black Bear City, the sky was wide and the earth was wide. To find them was like looking for a needle in a haystack. No one was confident. Don't worry, they can't escape, Qin Feiyang suddenly said. And everyone looked at him in bewilderment. Jiang Laoda, Fat Lord is back. At this moment, a loud shout came from afar. Not long later, Fatso ran over breathlessly and said in admiration, Jiang Laoda, you are really a genius. Those old farts of the Ling family really left Black Bear City with a woman. Qin Feiyang asked, which direction did they go? Fatso said, the west gate, and then went straight to the west. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Luo Xiong, but before he could speak, Luo Xiong said, Old Feng, old Mo, I'll have to trouble you to make a trip. Feng Cheng and Old Emo nodded, and their battle chi surged. Without touching the ground, they turned into a stream of light and quickly disappeared. At the same time, the Ling family had suddenly exploded and punched towards Qin Feiyang. He hated Qin Feiyang to the core. Chapter 83. At this moment, everyone was concerned about the matter of Ling Yunfei's mother. They were not prepared at all. They did not expect that the Ling family head would still be so stubborn and try to kill Qin Feiyang. However, it did not mean that Qin Feiyang was not prepared. Uncle Yuan had repeatedly warned him that no matter how strong or weak the enemy was, he had to go all out. Therefore, even though the Ling family head was now a prisoner, he did not let down his guard. Just as the Ling family head's fist was about to hit him, he did not hesitate to grab Ling Yunfei and use the Luo Yan steps to retreat. Because he knew that once the Ling family head failed, he would definitely attack Ling Yunfei again. The Ling family head's fist missed, but he did not give up and continued to pounce on the two. With Qin Feiyang's cultivation, even with the Luo Yan steps, his speed could not be compared to the Ling family head. If there was no one around, today the two of them would definitely die. But don't forget, there were still a few big shots around. After Luo Xiong and the martial arts hall master reacted, they rushed towards the Ling family head at almost the same time. Cold light shot out from their eyes. Both of them were battle kings. How fast was their speed? In the blink of an eye, they grabbed the Ling family head and forcefully suppressed him. The Ling family head's face was ashen, and he was completely in despair. Now it was impossible for anyone to help him. Even if the city lord wanted to, he did not have the guts. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, "City lord, how do you plan to deal with this person?" "What do you think?" the city lord asked. Qin Feiyang said, "If it were up to me, I would kill him directly and end it all." The city lord said, "This matter is not serious enough to kill. How about this? I will give the order to drive the Ling family out of Black Bear City." The Ling family head was overjoyed. As long as he did not die, there was still a chance. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Drive out of Black Bear City? This was simply a joke. The city lord was obviously still protecting the Ling family. Qin Feiyang glanced at the city lord and then at the Ling family head, who was restrained by Luo Xiong and the martial arts hall master, kneeling on the ground, unable to move. This was undoubtedly a good opportunity. His eyes flashed and he said lightly, "If that's the case, I have a few words to say to the Ling family head." He strode over and whispered into the Ling family head's ear. "Do you think that with the help of the city lord, you can escape today?" Finished speaking, he took out the Chang Shui and swung it fiercely, directly cutting off the Ling family head's neck. Then he immediately put away the Chang Shui. The speed was too fast. In addition, no one was mentally prepared. All they saw was a flash of white light, and a neat cut appeared on Ling family head's throat. Blood spurted out like a fountain. The Ling family head glared at Qin Feiyang, his eyes full of hatred. It was as if he wanted to say something, but before he could, his head tilted to one side and he died on the spot. Everyone was dumbstruck. Especially the disciples of the Ling family. They were extremely nervous. The death of the family head was equivalent to the collapse of the family's pillar of support. To them, it was equivalent to a catastrophe. Boom. All of a sudden, a terrifying aura surged out like an avalanche, shocking the entire place. It was the city lord who was flipping out. After being provoked one after another, he was about to go berserk. But at the same time, Luo Xiong also released his aura and confronted the city lord. The two giants looked at each other, and their expressions gradually turned cold. Umph. In the end, the city lord snorted, flicked his sleeves, and turned to leave angrily. He didn't dare to stay any longer, because he was afraid that he couldn't control himself, and really fought with Luo Xiong. Once the city lord left, the disciples and servants of the Ling family were even more flustered. Although the treasure pavilion master had the ability to fight with Luo Xiong, he obviously didn't want to meddle in other people's business. The martial arts hall master's standpoint also changed because of Ling Yunfei. Now, who could help them? Who would be willing to help them? They all knew that today was the end of the Ling family. Luo Xiong glanced at the Ling family and said, Let's go, we will wait outside. The group left the Ling family. Fatso went to Qin Feiyang and said with a flattering smile, Jiang Laoda, you have to keep your word. I will definitely not treat you badly. Qin Feiyang patted Fatso's shoulder and turned to Ling Yunfei. He smiled faintly and said, when old Feng and the others bring your mother back, you have to thank them and this fat lord. Ling Yunfei nodded and cupped his hands. Thank you, fat bro. Fatso waved his hand and said, we are all brothers, no need to be so polite. But you are quite good at hiding. Not only did you deceive the Ling family for more than 10 years, but you also deceived everyone in Black Bear City. I didn't want it to be like this. Ling Yunfei said dejectedly. Fatso walked over and put his arm around Ling Yunfei's shoulder. He laughed and said, brother, the beautiful life is still waiting for us to enjoy. Those unlucky things in the past, let's just treat it as a fart. Anyway, it is others who are stinking, right? Ling Yunfei was stunned. What kind of logic was this? However, after hearing Fatso's words, his heart relaxed a lot. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. Although Fatso was usually a bit unreliable, he was quite reliable at critical moments. Ling Yunfei, I killed your second uncle. Do you hate me? He suddenly asked. Of course not. I thought that if he died in front of me, I would be more or less sad. But when he really died in front of me, I found that I couldn't feel sad at all. In fact, there was a strong sense of pleasure in my heart. Ling Yunfei said. Qin Feiyang and Fatso looked at each other. How deep was his resentment? I'm afraid that since childhood he has never lived a peaceful life. My lords who killed Zhao Lu and Li Seven. Why did the city lord look so angry just now? As soon as Qin Feiyang and the others walked out of the Ling residence, the family heads surrounded them, their eyes full of surprise. Luo Xiong said, it was the Ling family head who instigated Butler Ling to kill them, in order to frame Jiang Haoyan. The crowd was in an uproar. Fatso stepped forward and shouted, by the way, let me tell you that the Ling family head is dead. The city lord personally ordered that the Ling family will be removed from Black Bear City from now on. As soon as the news came out, it immediately exploded. In just a few hundred breaths, it spread to every corner of Black Bear City, and everyone knew about it. Some were shocked. Some were happy. Of course, the Jiang family and the Mu family were happy, because the destruction of the Ling family was equivalent to one less strong competitor. From then on, the situation in Black Bear City was no longer a tripartite. The most important thing was that without the Ling family, they would get more benefits. As for the patriarchs of the small families, they were probably thinking about how to rise up and become the third big family after the Ling family. An hour later, Feng Cheng and Elder Emo finally returned. Behind them, there was a woman. Her hair was disheveled, her face was pale, and she was extremely haggard. Her clothes were also extremely dirty. She looked as if she had just walked out of a garbage dump, and her body was emitting a foul smell. Moreover, on her wrists and ankles, there were 2 dark iron chains, as thick as a baby's arm. As she walked, she kept making clanging sounds. The 2 iron chains were very heavy, and every step she took was very difficult. Mother! Ling Yunfei's body trembled, and he looked at the woman without blinking. In an instant, tears streamed down his face, and his heart ached. Not to mention Ling Yunfei, even Qin Feiyang, Luo Xiong, and the others couldn't help but feel sour in their hearts. Fei. When the woman saw Ling Yunfei as well, she stopped in her tracks and called out softly. Her tears also fell uncontrollably. Mother! Ling Yunfei roared and ran forward hurriedly, hugging the woman and crying bitterly. Luo Xiong asked, Old Feng, Old Emo, why didn't you help her remove the iron chains on her? Feng Qing smiled. It's better to leave this matter to her son. Elder Emo had a smile on his face as well. Qin Feiyang asked in confusion, Elders, where are the elders of the Ling family? Feng Qing said, We let them go. Let them go. Qin Feiyang's expression changed. Those elders were all martial ancestor realm cultivators. This was akin to letting the tiger return to the mountain. Feng Qing waved his hands indifferently and said, Don't worry, I've already taught them a lesson. I believe they won't dare to find trouble with you and Ling Yunfei again. I hope so, Qin Feiyang mumbled. The destruction of the Ling family was caused by him. The head of the Ling family was also killed by him. He didn't believe that those elders would give up. But since they had already let them go, what else can they do? They can only be careful in the future. Luo Xiong smiled. Jiang Haoyan, let's go and give the mother and son a chance to be alone. Qin Feiyang nodded. Although there are many doubts in his heart, it's obviously not the time to ask. After Qin Feiyang and others left, the others also dispersed. Jiang family had looked at the gate of the Ling family. His eyes flashed with an inexplicable light. He walked to Mu family head and whispered, I have something to discuss with you. Mu family head looked at him with some surprise and said, It just so happens that I have something to discuss with you. The two family heads mixed in the crowd and quickly left. Soon, only the martial arts hall master and Ling Yunfei's mother and son were left. The martial arts hall master stepped forward and smiled. Yunfei, I believe your mother is tired. Let's go back to the martial arts hall and let your mother take a hot bath and relax. You can talk slowly. Okay. Ling Yunfei nodded and turned his head to look around. He was slightly stunned and asked, Where are Jiang Haoyan and the others? The martial arts hall master said. They left first. Ling Yunfei said anxiously. I haven't thanked them properly. How can they leave? There will be plenty of time in the future. Why are you in a hurry? The martial arts hall master shook his head and smiled. That's true. Ling Yunfei nodded and smiled. He borrowed a dagger from the martial arts hall master. After cutting the two iron chains, he supported the woman and told her what happened these days. Then he followed the martial arts hall master to the Dan Hall. At the same time, the guards of the City Lord Mansion went to the major city gates and posted a notice. The content was roughly, the Ling family spread rumors and caused trouble. From today onwards, the Ling family will be removed from the Black Bear City. All the children of the Ling family will be ordered to leave the Black Bear City before dawn tomorrow. Once this notice was posted, the destruction of the Ling family became a foregone conclusion. No one could change it. But in the City Lord Mansion, the City Lord summoned two guards. These two people were his confidants. Leave the city immediately. No matter what, you have to find the elders of the Ling family. After you find them, don't tell anyone. Don't bring them back. Temporarily settle them in the nearby mountains and wait for my next order. The City Lord ordered, and the two immediately left. Little bastard, you think it's over? Let me tell you, it's still too early. Chapter 84. On the way back to the Pill Palace, Fengqing rubbed Qin Feiyang's head and asked curiously, Why are you so smart? What do you mean? Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked at him in confusion. At that time, we all saw the elders of the Ling family leaving first. However, we didn't expect that they were planning to escape with Ling Yunfei's mother. Not only did you think of that, you even asked Fatso to follow them. I really want to open your head and see what's inside. As Fengqing spoke, he stared at Qin Feiyang's head, his eyes shining. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel numb. He hurriedly took a few steps to the side. Then, he laughed dryly and said, I'm just a blind cat running into a dead mouse. I'm just lucky. Don't talk nonsense with me. Fengqing stared at him and said, Tell me honestly, did you kill Zhao Lu and the others? Qin Feiyang said, I swear that it was Butler Ling who killed them. This was the truth. There was no need to feel guilty. Fengqing frowned and said, Why did that Ling guy say that the bodies were buried outside of the Pill Palace? Qin Feiyang briefly explained what happened that night. Haha. So that's how it is. Interesting. Really interesting. Brat, I realize that I like you more and more. Why don't you be my disciple? Fengqing laughed and said. Luo Xiong and Elder Mo both looked at Fengqing with disdain. He had level 9 mental power. He even concocted a supreme-grade elixir on his first try. With such talent, you're worthy to be his master? Before you open your mouth, can you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? What kind of virtue are you? You're really shameless. Although the two of them didn't say it out loud, Anyone who understood would be able to read their eyes. However, Fengqing wasn't embarrassed at all. He said confidently, "No matter what, I am the most experienced elder of the Pill Palace. I am more than qualified to teach a newbie like him." "Alright then. Why don't you go and refine a top-grade pill for me to see? If you can't refine it, then stop talking nonsense. Don't embarrass yourself here," Elder Mo said mercilessly. Fengqing was furious on the spot. Seeing that a quarrel was about to break out, Luo Xiong's face darkened. He shouted, "Enough, enough. Don't you see that there are still 2 disciples here? Quarreling here and there. What a scandal." Fatso hurriedly said, "I didn't hear anything." Qin Feiyang also said seriously, "I didn't see anything either. But I don't care if he's a disciple, but if he can be my grandson-in-law, I can seriously consider it." Grandson-in-law. Luo Xiong and the other man were taken aback. Their eyes immediately turned playful. Fengqing was also taken aback. Then he became furious and shouted, "Bastard, you're making fun of my granddaughter again. See if I don't teach you a lesson today." "TSK, looking at your face, your granddaughter probably isn't that good looking either. I don't even like her." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he hurriedly ran away. "My granddaughter isn't that good looking?" Fengqing was stunned for a moment. Then he roared in exasperation, "Brat, stop right there." Luo Xiong hurriedly grabbed him and said angrily, "You're already so old, yet you're still causing trouble. Don't you feel ashamed?" "He's already lost all his face." Elder Mo suddenly stabbed him again, causing Fengqing to blow his beard and glare. He was extremely angry. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Fatso also hurriedly ran away. After catching up to Qin Feiyang, he looked at Qin Feiyang with a strange expression and asked, "Jiang Lauda, have you seen Elder Feng's granddaughter?" "No." Qin Feiyang shook his head and asked confusedly, "Why do you ask?" "Nothing, nothing." Fatso waved his hand, but there was a trace of ridicule in his eyes. He secretly laughed and said, "When you see her in person, you'll know what it means to be shocking." Back at the pill hall, Qin Feiyang directly went to the pill fire hall and entered the number 4 alchemy room. But he didn't refine any pills. He went to the ancient castle and started to copy the 4th stroke of the calligraphy. To copy the 3rd stroke, he used 8,000 chi amassing pills. If there were no accidents, the 4th stroke should cost 32,000 chi amassing pills. Luckily, he didn't lack chi amassing pills now. Late at night, a group of black-clothed people broke into the Ling family. They were powerful, and their methods were vicious. They were like grim reapers from hell, crazily reaping lives. None of the disciples and servants survived. During the entire process, not a single scream was heard. In the end, this group of black-clothed people even took away all of the Ling family's treasures and resources. In other words, the Ling family only had a dozen elders and Ling Yan left. Without a doubt, the next day, this incident caused a huge uproar. Everyone was guessing who was so vicious. They actually massacred the Ling family in one night. After the city lord heard the news, there was no doubt that he was furious. He ordered people to investigate thoroughly. The first person they thought of was Qin Feiyang, because in the entire Black Bear City, only Qin Feiyang had the deepest grudge with the Ling family. But soon, Luo Xiong stood up and helped Qin Feiyang to clarify. Everyone began to suspect Ling Yunfei again. The martial arts hall master also stood up and helped Ling Yunfei to clarify. If it wasn't Qin Feiyang or Ling Yunfei, then who could it be? No one could think of a third person. As time passed, this matter didn't fade away. Instead, it continued to ferment and become more and more serious. But the culprit couldn't be found. At the same time, various small families also began to fish in troubled waters, wanting to soar into the sky and become the 3rd largest family. But how could the Mu family and the Jiang family let them succeed? Full suppression. The situation in Black Bear City was getting more and more chaotic by the day. Undercurrents were surging. Open strife and covert fighting. Every day, there were people disappearing for no reason. On this day, Cheng Yi Jijin Lu Hong and Ling Yan were finally released from the pig cage. After a month of contamination, without exception, The four of them were covered in a foul stench. Anyone who met them would pinch their noses and take a detour. The four of them held their hands, lowered their heads, and silently returned to their residence with a heart full of resentment. They washed and scrubbed until the stench on their bodies was completely washed away. Only then did they dare to show their faces in front of others. Ling Yan immediately knew that the Ling family was massacred. A ball of anger immediately burned in his heart. Cheng Yi and the other two were also furious when they knew that the alchemy room was occupied. They swore silently in their hearts. They must pay back 100 times and wash away their shame. On the same day, a small piece of news spread among the disciples of the Pill Hall. Have you heard? Jiang Haotian and Elder Feng's granddaughter are engaged. He's just a person who got in through connections. He didn't rely on his own ability. That's right. He could get the right to use Alchemy Room Number 4 because of Elder Feng's special care. I thought he was very capable. Turns out he's just a pretty boy who relies on women. This kind of pretentious person is really disgusting. For a moment, discussions were everywhere in the Pill Hall. The news quickly reached Feng Cheng's ears. He was furious on the spot. He immediately went to the Pill Fire Hall. Jiang Haotian, get out here. He stood outside Alchemy Room Number 4 and shouted angrily. Qin Feiyang frowned. Why did Feng Cheng come to him? He had already copied half of the fourth stroke. He wanted to copy it all at once. But now, it seemed that he could only stop here temporarily. After closing the iron book, he appeared in the alchemy room with a thought. At this moment, Feng Cheng lost his patience. He directly smashed open the stone door and walked in angrily. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously, Elder Feng, who made you so angry? Feng Cheng said with a sullen face. You still have the nerve to ask? Tell me, what's going on with the rumors outside? Gossips? Qin Feiyang frowned. Feng Cheng said angrily. Now everyone is talking about the engagement between you and my granddaughter. You dare to say that this has nothing to do with you? Engagement? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He was a little confused. But suddenly, he remembered. Last time in the restaurant he did talk about this with Cheng Yi. It was just that he didn't expect Cheng Yi to make a fuss about this. Elder Feng, listen to my explanation. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. After he closed the stone door, he began to narrate what had happened in detail. After Elder Feng heard this, he frowned and said, Even so, you shouldn't talk nonsense. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, Yes. It's my fault. I apologize to you. I apologize to your granddaughter. If an apology is useful, what's the use of the law? My granddaughter is still a virgin. Do you know how much of an impact you've had on her after hearing what you've said? Kid, you must give me a satisfactory answer as soon as possible. Otherwise you'll get it. Feng Cheng glared at him fiercely, then turned around and left. Chapter 85. Qin Feiyang walked out of the alchemy room. Feng Cheng's roar alarmed everyone in the Pillfire Palace. Everyone walked out of the alchemy room. Therefore, the left and right sides of the corridor were crowded. Moreover, seeing Qin Feiyang come out, everyone looked at him with disdain. Make way. Fatso pushed through the crowd and walked to Qin Feiyang whispering, There are a few things I want to talk to you about. Let's go to the alchemy room first. Qin Feiyang nodded. The two entered the alchemy room and closed the stone door. Fatso glanced at the alchemy furnace and said in surprise, There's no medicinal fragrance or high temperature. You didn't refine pills this month? Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat. Fatso was really meticulous. I was cultivating. He answered casually and asked, What do you want to say? Yes. Let's get down to business. Just a month ago, on the night we left the Ling family was massacred. Fatso said. What? Qin Feiyang turned pale with fright and asked, Who is the real murderer? Fatso shook his head. We haven't found the murderer yet, but they're all suspecting you. Suspecting me? Qin Feiyang frowned. That's right. Although the temple master cleared your name in time, and we all know that you've been in the alchemy room this month, others don't know. Since we can't find the murderer, everyone is starting to suspect you. And there are rumors that you and Ling Yunfei joined hands and massacred the Ling family. Fatso said. Nonsense. Qin Feiyang was furious. Even an idiot would know that he and Ling Yunfei were not capable of massacring the Ling family. It's no use getting angry. The most important thing now is to find the murderer. Otherwise, if this continues, it'll be bad for you, Fatso said in a low voice. Qin Feiyang's heart sank. Who was it that was causing trouble in the dark? Could it be that there was a premeditated plan to frame him? No. If they really wanted to frame him, the real culprit would definitely be at the scene and leave some clues or evidence about him. This way, when the people from the city lord's mansion went to investigate the scene and saw the evidence, they would definitely come to the pill hall immediately to ask him. However, until now, no one had come to look for him. From this, it could be seen that this was not a conspiracy against him. Could it be revenge? Qin Feiyang asked. Fatso, does the Ling family have any enemies outside? I've never heard of that. However, it can't be someone from the outside. After all, the 4 city gates are guarded day and night. If a large number of people were to enter Black Bear City, it would be impossible for nothing to happen that night. If we really want to talk about enmity, I'm afraid the Jiang family and the Mu family have the deepest hatred for the Ling family. Fatty's analysis was clear and logical. When the Jiang family and the Mu family were mentioned, the two of them looked at each other at the same time. Their eyes were shining. Fatso shook his head again and said, No, the city lord has already given the order to chase the Ling family out of Black Bear City. The Jiang and Mu families don't need to massacre the Ling family. Qin Feiyang nodded. He also felt that it was reasonable. But suddenly, he thought of something and asked, what if they are worried that the Ling family will rise from the ashes? What do you mean? Fatso was surprised. Qin Feiyang said, Everyone knows that the city lord is biased towards the Ling family. We can't rule out the possibility that they will return to Black Bear City one day. The patriarchs of the Jiang and Mu families aren't idiots. It's impossible for them not to see through this. Fatso continued. So they took this opportunity to eliminate the Ling family? Qin Feiyang nodded. All the disputes in this world were basically inseparable from the word benefit. For benefits, some people could turn against each other, some even disown their own family. The Jiang family, the Mu family, and the Ling family had been fighting openly and secretly for so many years, scheming to destroy each other. Now that there was such a good opportunity, how could they let it go so easily? Not to mention, in the entire Black Bear City, other than the Pill Hall, the Martial Arts Hall, and the Treasure Pavilion, only the Jiang family and the Mu family had the ability to massacre the Ling family. After pondering for a while, Qin Feiyang said, Fatso, do me another favor. Fatso said with a sneaky smile, as long as there are benefits, not to mention one, even if it's 10, Fat Lord will do it. Qin Feiyang said, help me spy on the Jiang family and the Mu family. Fatso immediately frowned. Qin Feiyang said with a flattering tone, I don't dare to say for others, but for you, Fat Lord, I believe that with your brain, you will definitely be able to handle it easily. Fatso rolled his eyes and said helplessly, although I know you are flattering, Fat Lord, there is no other way. Who told the Fat Lord to like this? Okay, I will leave this matter to the Fat Lord. After saying that, Fatso was about to leave, but suddenly he slapped his head and said angrily, look at my memory, there is another thing. 1 month later, the Danwang Hall will send people to Black Bear City. What are they coming for? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Of course, they are coming to select talents. It is said that there are only 3 spots in total. One of them is a predetermined spot. This spot was originally given to Qingyi, but now that you are here, he will definitely not get it. So you have to be careful. He may find a way to get rid of you, the stumbling block. Fatso warned. Qin Feiyang frowned and asked puzzledly, they are all entering the Danwang Hall. Is there a difference between the predetermined spot and the other 2 spots? Of course there is a difference. The holder of the predetermined spot can refine pills as soon as he enters the Danwang Hall. Moreover, whether it is the alchemy room, the residence, or the pill recipe, they will all receive special care. And the holder of the other 2 spots, after entering the Danwang Hall, has to work as a servant in the Danwang Hall for a year. When the time is up, they can enter the alchemy room to refine pills. Fatso said. The difference is so big? Qin Feiyang frowned. Wasn't being a servant the same as wasting a year's time? Not to mention wasting time, he would also have to suffer the supercilious eyes and humiliation of others all day long. It seemed that he really had to get this predetermined spot. Qin Feiyang asked, "Where is Chengyi now?" At the mention of this, Fatso couldn't help but laugh mischievously. After he came out of the pig cage and learned that this alchemy room was occupied by you, he immediately went to find the hall master to reason with him. Guess what happened in the end? Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me quickly. Qin Feiyang urged. Originally, the hall master planned to give him the alchemy room number 6 after he came out. In the end, after he caused such a ruckus, not only was he fiercely reprimanded by the hall master, but he was also sent to the alchemy room 110 to stay there. Fatso said. 110. Isn't that the alchemy room I used when I first came here? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yeah, that's the worst alchemy room. The hall master gave him the alchemy room. It's more painful than killing him. The most important thing is that Ling Yan, Ji Jin, and Lu Hong were all given a pretty good alchemy room. You didn't see how ugly his face was when he entered the alchemy room 110. Fatso laughed gloatingly, and the fat all over his body was trembling. If a person doesn't know what's good for him, it's useless no matter how talented he is. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sneered. However, it's said that he's preparing to fight for the predetermined quota, so he probably won't show up in a short time. Fatso said. Then shouldn't we kill him now? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. What? Fatso was shocked and said. You still want to kill him? For those who don't change their nature, only by killing him can we eliminate all future troubles. When he comes out, inform me as soon as possible. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly. No problem. Fatso hesitated for a while and finally nodded. Then he took out a letter from his arms and threw it to Qin Feiyang, saying, Ling Yunfei asked Fat Lord to give this to you this morning. You're welcome. After that, Fatso left the alchemy room. Qin Feiyang opened the letter and read it carefully. Then he put the letter into his arms and entered the castle to continue the 4th stroke. In the evening, he appeared in the alchemy room again, and then walked out of the Pill-Fire Palace. Under countless disdainful gazes, he left the Pill-Fire Palace and went to the East City Gate. He glanced at the mountain range in front of him, and locked his eyes on a small forest. Then he strode over to them. A moment later, Qin Feiyang entered the small forest, and walked towards the depths of the forest. About a few hundred breaths later, he walked out of the forest and came to a river. Through the moonlight he could clearly see a huge black rock on the other side of the river. Ling Yunfei stood on the huge rock. You're finally here. Ling Yunfei smiled. Qin Feiyang jumped across the river, and landed on the huge rock. He asked, how is Auntie? Ling Yunfei said. In the first few days, she was still a little lonely and didn't like to talk much. But now she's much better. She even said that she must find a time to treat you to a meal to thank you properly. That's good. Qin Feiyang smiled and said. Then why did you ask me to come here today? I asked you out? Ling Yunfei was slightly stunned and asked suspiciously. Didn't you ask me out? Me? Qin Feiyang was also stunned. He frowned and said. Didn't you ask Fatso to bring me a letter and ask me to come here to meet you? No, you were the one who asked someone to bring me a letter. I still have this letter. Ling Yunfei took out a letter from his arms and opened it. He handed it to Qin Feiyang and said, Look, it's written clearly. Qin Feiyang looked at it, and was immediately surprised. He also hurriedly took out the letter. The 2 pieces of letter were compared. The handwriting was exactly the same. Obviously, it was from the same person. And even the content was exactly the same. In the evening, outside the East City Gate, on the riverbank at the end of the grove. How could this be? Looking at the 2 pieces of letter, Ling Yunfei was very surprised. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Suddenly, his face changed greatly and he growled. Oh no, we've been fooled. This is a killing trap. Let's go. A killing trap. Ling Yunfei's body trembled. The two quickly turned around and looked at the opposite bank. They were about to jump over. Dong. But at this moment, several black shadows rushed out of the river, stirring up waves of several meters high as they pounced towards Qin Feiyang and Qin Yu. Retreat! Qin Feiyang shouted. The two retreated from the boulder at the same time. Bang! As soon as they landed on the ground, the boulder in front of them was torn apart with a loud bang. Pieces of gravel of different sizes flew toward them. Qin Feiyang and Li Tianlan were the first to bear the brunt. Chapter 86. The two of them grimaced in pain. Especially the place where they were hit by the gravel. It was a bloody mess. Fresh blood flowed out of the wound. In an instant, they were covered in blood. Whoosh! The few black figures landed on the riverbank one after another. Through the moonlight, they could clearly see their true faces and the murderous intent in their eyes. It's you guys. Qin Feiyang and Lin Haoyan's expressions changed. These people were the elders of the Ling clan. Run! Qin Feiyang shouted in a low voice. He turned around and got up. Ignoring the injuries on his body, he ran towards the forest behind him. But, after running a few steps, he stopped and looked ahead. His pupils constricted, because there were a few black figures in the forest ahead. At the same time, a few people walked out from the left and right. They were also the elders of the Ling clan. There were a total of 13 people. Ling Yunfei glanced at the 13 people and his face was pale. He asked, Jiang Haoyan, what do we do now? Qin Feiyang said, how strong are they? Ling Yunfei said in a low voice, 11 one-star martial grandmasters and 2 two-star martial grandmasters. Qin Feiyang's heart sank. A total of 13 martial grandmasters. With his and Ling Yunfei's strength, they had no chance of winning. Why don't you guys run? Hurry, continue. Why aren't you running? Let me tell you, you won't be able to escape today. The 13 people approached step by step and surrounded the two of them in the middle. They had sinister smiles on their faces. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice, to be able to deliver the letter to us, you guys are really resourceful. One of them sneered. It's all thanks to the city lord's help. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to deliver the letter to you. Qin Feiyang and Lin Haoyan's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Don't talk nonsense. Another elder hurriedly shouted. What are you afraid of? They're going to die soon. It's okay to let them know. That person was disdainful. That's right. We have so many people. I don't believe that they can escape. Another person nodded in agreement. Qin Feiyang asked, are you the ones who massacred the Ling clan? Bullshit. We are the elders of the Ling family. Will we massacre the Ling family? It was all done by the Jiang family and the Mu family. The city lord has already found out. It's just that the situation in Black Bear City is too chaotic right now, so he didn't announce it. After we kill all of you, we will begin our revenge. We will make the Jiang and Mu families die without any descendants to repay this debt of blood. The 13 of them were filled with killing intent. It really is them. Qin Feiyang mumbled in disdain. I don't know about the Mu clan, but the Jiang clan is backed by the chief pavilion lord of the county of Yan. Would you dare to make a move against the Jiang clan? Those who have nothing to lose are not afraid of those who wear shoes. The Ling clan is already gone. At worst, we'll just fight to the death. Don't waste your breath with him. Maybe he's stalling for time. Attack. The 13 of them sped up at the same time. Their bodies were filled with killing intent, and their eyes were filled with ferocious light. No matter how powerful the enemy is, we can't just sit there and wait for death. Follow me closely. Qin Feiyang let out a low roar and actually took the initiative to meet one of them. Ling Yunfei was shocked and hurriedly followed him. Because there was no other choice now. All of their escape routes had been blocked. They could only desperately tear open an opening. You overestimate yourself. That person sneered. As he approached, he raised his arm and slapped Qin Feiyang. True qi swept in all directions. However, Qin Feiyang did not stop. Instead, he charged even more fiercely. You have a death wish. That person smiled brightly. But suddenly, Qin Feiyang took a step forward, and the palm passed through his chest. At this moment, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He suddenly raised his arm and swung it down with all his might. A white divine light cut through the night sky. That person's right shoulder suddenly spurted blood. The next moment, his entire arm fell from his shoulder and fell to the ground. Ah! That person was stunned at first. When the intense pain spread throughout his body, he could not help but howl in pain. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei ran past that person and fled into the forest without looking back. The sudden turn of events caused the other 12 people to be dumbfounded. That person shouted, "What are you doing? Hurry up and chase, be careful of the sharp weapon in his hand." The 12 people suddenly came back to their senses and immediately entered the forest, chasing after Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei. Ling Yunfei glanced behind and said in a deep voice, "They are coming. With our speed, they will catch up with us in at most 5 breaths." The two of them used the gathering smoke steps and returning yuan steps. They were as fast as lightning, and their speed had reached the extreme. But compared to a martial ancestor, their speed was comparable to a snail. Qin Feiyang glanced ahead. Although it was a forest, there was no place to hide. What should we do? Can we only hide in the castle? He struggled in his heart. Although he trusted Ling Yunfei a lot now, he still didn't want anyone to know about the ancient castle. Gotcha! Suddenly, the two of them lost their footing, and their bodies fell straight down. It turned out that there was a deep pit here. Because it was night, they could not see the bottom. It should be a trap set by the hunters when they were hunting the beasts. Damn it, why are we so unlucky? Ling Yunfei cursed. They were already at the end of the road, but they did not expect to fall into a trap. For the two of them, it was undoubtedly worse. There is no other way, we can only go to the castle. No. Why is there an echo? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Ling Yunfei's angry curses actually reverberated below, and didn't disperse for a long time. If it was just a trap, at most a few meters deep, such a situation would definitely not occur. It was very likely that there was an underground passage down here. Bang bang. The two of them landed at the bottom almost at the same time. It was about a dozen meters deep. Such a height could not cause any damage to them. They are below. Go down. This should be a trap. They can't run away. At the top of the cave, there was a series of words. Following closely, Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei felt that someone had jumped down. Is there a match? Qin Feiyang hurriedly said. There was another echo. It was too dark inside. One couldn't even see one's fingers. It was impossible to distinguish north from south. Yes. Ling Yunfei responded and took out a match from his arms. After burning it, the place suddenly lit up. The two of them instantly noticed that there was a round dark hole on the left. It was almost the size of a dustpan. They had to bend down to go in. Looking up, they saw an old man falling down quickly. Quick, Qin Feiyang urged. The two of them bent down and entered the dark hole one after the other. They ran into the depths without looking back. About dozens of meters deep. Ling Yunfei frowned. Jiang Haoyan, why do I feel that something is wrong? Qin Feiyang said. I have the same feeling. Dark passages are generally square, but why is this one circular? It doesn't seem to be man-made. Little beast, let's see where you can escape to. At this time, there was a sneer behind them. They didn't need to look back to know that the 12 elders had followed them. They're really haunting us. Ling Yunfei cursed secretly. And, do you smell it? There seems to be a fishy smell? Qin Feiyang suddenly said. Fishy smell? Ling Yunfei was stunned. He sniffed hard and frowned. There really is a fishy smell. Qin Feiyang said. I think we might. What? Ling Yunfei asked. Qin Feiyang swallowed his saliva and said, this is probably a snake cave. Hearing this, Ling Yunfei's hair stood on end. An uncontrollable chill surged in his heart. If this was really a snake cave, one could imagine how long and thick that snake was. Hiss. Suddenly, a hissing sound came from the depths of the dark hole. Qin Feiyang and Jiang Haoyan's bodies stiffened and their scalps exploded. If this wasn't a snake cave, what was it? Suddenly, the ground shook slightly. It seemed that something was crawling towards them. There was an unknown giant python in front of them, and 12 martial grandmasters behind them. What should they do? They thought that there was a way out, but they didn't expect it to be a dead end. At the same time, the 12 elders of the Ling family also heard the movement. They stopped and looked ahead in surprise. Ling Yunfei suddenly turned around and shouted to the 12 people, "This is a snake cave, get out!" Snake cave. A snake cave as big as a dustpan. This snake is at least 1 meter thick. Quick, quick, get out! The 12 people turned pale with fright and hurriedly turned back. If it was outside, they wouldn't be afraid. But here, even walking had to bend down, let alone fighting with the giant python. Seeing this, Ling Yunfei looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Let's go." "We can't go out." Qin Feiyang grabbed him. "If we don't go out, we'll die." Ling Yunfei shouted in a low voice. "If you were them, what would you do?" Qin Feiyang asked while looking at the walls on both sides. Ling Yunfei said without hesitation, "If I were them after leaving the snake cave, I would block the entrance." Speaking of this, Ling Yunfei suddenly realized. That's right. After the 12 people went out, they would definitely block the entrance and not let them leave the snake cave. At that time, he and Qin Feiyang would only be swallowed alive by the giant python. Boom. At this moment, at the entrance of the snake cave, there was a loud explosion. Accompanied by a rumbling sound, the entrance of the cave was tightly blocked. They really did plan to do so. Ling Yunfei's face was pale. Bang. Suddenly, another loud explosion came from the side. Ling Yunfei was shocked and hurriedly looked over. He saw Qin Feiyang punch the wall on the left, and a 2 to 3 meter black hole instantly appeared. "What are you doing?" Ling Yunfei was surprised. Qin Feiyang grabbed the fire starter from his hand and said, "Nonsense, of course it's to make a shelter. Go in." Ling Yunfei looked at him suspiciously and hurriedly entered the black hole. Qin Feiyang walked back for a distance, inserted the fire starter into the ground, and then hurriedly entered the dark hole. He bent his waist and poked his head out, looking into the depths of the dark passage. Seeing this, Ling Yunfei frowned and said, "Are you sure this is a shelter?" "To be exact, this is an ambush point," Qin Feiyang whispered. Ambush point? Ling Yunfei was shocked. The ground shook more and more violently. "It's coming." Qin Feiyang's eyes focused. A huge snake head came into his sight. It was as big as 2 wash basins. A pair of long and narrow snake eyes, under the weak light, were glowing with a gloomy light. On top of its head, there was a horn as thick as an arm. Single-horn giant python. Qin Feiyang's body and mind tightened. He had seen this kind of giant python in the capital before. It was very terrifying. The venom could kill in an instant. That horn was dozens of times harder than black iron. It was indestructible. Chapter 87. Ling Yunfei poked his head out to take a look, and was scared out of his wits. He hurriedly grabbed Qin Feiyang's wrist and said in a low voice, "You're no match for it. Don't be rash." "Let go." Qin Feiyang shouted in a low voice. Although the unicorn python was terrifying, the chong shui in his hand was enough to tear apart its defense. Ling Yunfei frowned and let go of his hand. He simply took out a black dagger from his qianquan bag and waited. "Don't interfere," Qin Feiyang whispered. His voice was so weak that only the two of them could hear it. Boom. Swish. The unicorn python was very fast. The fire starter in front of it attracted its attention. Therefore, when it passed by the deep pit, it did not notice Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei. At this moment, Qin Feiyang was like a cheetah. He rushed out of the deep pit like lightning and pounced on the unicorn python's body. His big hand slammed down. The chong shui radiated a sharp light. Clang. With sparks flying, it broke through the unicorn python's scales and sank into the python's 7 inches. Hiss. The unicorn python's pupils suddenly hissed. Its huge body rolled crazily in the cave. The snake cave was only the size of a dustpan. The space was too small. Qin Feiyang could not avoid it. He could only hold onto the chong shui tightly with one hand, and a snake scale with the other, to prevent his body from falling out. because if he fell down he would definitely be crushed to death by the unicorn python's huge body. Bang! Bang! The unicorn python rampaged in the cave. The entire snake cave was shaking violently, and some places had already begun to collapse. Even the ground above was experiencing an earthquake. The 12 elders of the Ling family all sneered when they sensed the movement underground. The earthquake lasted for hundreds of breaths before it gradually calmed down. Inside the snake cave, the fire starter had already been extinguished. It was pitch black. Jiang Haoyan, where are you? Ling Yunfei's worried voice sounded in the darkness. I'm here. Qin Feiyang's voice sounded, but it was weak and powerless. He had heard of it. Ling Yunfei was even more worried. He hastily reached into his bosom and muttered, "Luckily there's still a match." He took out a match and blew on it. The place immediately lit up. Looking at the scene in front of him, Ling Yunfei was so shocked that he couldn't speak for a long time. A bloody snake body took up half of the snake cave. The smell of blood was pungent. Both sides of his body were piled with gravel and mud. As a result, the space here became even narrower, making it impossible to walk around. He could only crawl forward. Come and help me. Qin Feiyang's weak voice sounded again. Ling Yunfei quivered. He hastily crouched down. With one hand holding the torch and the other holding the snake's scales, he crawled along the snake's body. There was a lot of gravel in front of him, and it was very difficult for him to climb. Where are you? He couldn't help but ask anxiously when he didn't see Qin Feiyang for a while. Here. Qin Feiyang's voice came from a pile of rocks in front of him. Ling Yunfei quickly crawled over, inserted the torch aside, moved his hands together, moved the rocks and dug up the mud. After a while, Qin Feiyang appeared in his sight. But at this moment, not only was his face covered with dust, but his body was also covered with cuts and bruises. Although he had been lying on the python's body, as the python rolled, he kept crashing into the walls of the snake cave. If it weren't for his strong willpower, gritting his teeth and persevering, he would have let go and been crushed to death by the python's body. Ling Yunfei reached out to pull him. Qin Feiyang hurriedly said, "Don't move. My legs seem to be broken." What should I do? Ling Yunfei was burning with anxiety when he heard this. Qin Feiyang said, "Move aside. I'll do it myself." Ling Yunfei hurriedly retreated 2 meters. Qin Feiyang grabbed the scales and exerted force with both hands. A heart-wrenching pain suddenly came from his legs, making him break out in a cold sweat. But he gritted his teeth and crawled out with difficulty. At this time, he was already convulsing from the pain. Ling Yunfei hurriedly crawled over, took out a bone-continuing pill and a healing pill, and fed Qin Feiyang. Medicinal pills were powerful. Soon after, the pain began to gradually disappear. Looking at Qin Feiyang with a face full of fear, Ling Yunfei rolled his eyes and said, "This time, you were really too impulsive. It's lucky to be able to keep your life." Impulsive? Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "The entrance of the cave is blocked. If we don't kill it, we will be swallowed alive by it sooner or later." Yes. What you said is reasonable," Ling Yunfei said helplessly. However, he sincerely admired Qin Feiyang. At first, when he was ambushed by the Ling family elders, he was almost desperate. But this person was not afraid in the face of danger, and took him to tear open a gap. When he fell into the snake cave, he only knew how to curse, but this person calmly judged that there was a secret passage underground. When he encountered the single-horned giant python, his first thought was to escape, but Qin Feiyang launched a counterattack in a short time and successfully killed the giant python. This kind of temperament really left others in the dust. "It seems that I still need to sharpen myself," Ling Yunfei secretly muttered and asked, "What do we do next?" Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, pointed to Chang Shui that was still stuck in the giant python's 7 inches, and said, "Use that dagger to cut off the giant python's horn and then collect the venom." The horn and venom are indeed good treasures, but can your dagger cut off the horn? Ling Yunfei pulled out Chang Shui with a trace of doubt on his face. "You will know when you try." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Ling Yunfei climbed onto the snake's head and waved hard. With a clang, the horn was immediately cut off from the root. So sharp. Ling Yunfei was stunned. There was no resistance at all. It felt as easy as cutting off a strand of hair. So he has something to rely on. Only now did he understand that Qin Feiyang was not impulsive, but confident. Then, jumping down from the snake's head, he used a sharp stone to pry open the giant python's bloody mouth, took out a jade bottle, and carefully collected the venom. Qin Feiyang had been paying attention to the changes in Ling Yunfei's expression. He let Ling Yunfei use Chang Shui to test whether Ling Yunfei would be greedy. As a result, Ling Yunfei did not let him down. Although he was very surprised, there was no greed in his expression. After a while, Ling Yunfei climbed over and handed the Chang Shui, the horn, and the venom to Qin Feiyang. After keeping the Chang Shui and the horn in the Qianquan bag, Qin Feiyang sized up the venom, his eyes flickering. The venom was almost transparent, and was more than half a bottle. Don't underestimate this venom. Even a martial grandmaster could be poisoned to death. Suddenly, his eyes flashed coldly as he looked at Ling Yunfei and asked, "Do you want to kill them?" "Kill." Ling Yunfei nodded. If today's matter did not happen, he would consider it. After all, they were all his clansmen. It would be too unreasonable to kill them all. But now, it was obvious that they had entered a situation where they would fight to the death. If he was soft-hearted, sooner or later, he would die in the hands of the other party. However, how could he kill them? The other party could be a martial grandmaster. Qin Feiyang said, "Think of a way to get out first." "That's easy. Just blast it open." Ling Yunfei rolled up his sleeves, his fists covered with qi, and was about to punch upwards. Qin Feiyang hurriedly said, "No, if they haven't left, they will hear the movement here." Ling Yunfei was stunned. He lowered his arm and frowned. "Then what should we do?" Qin Feiyang thought for a while and said, "Use a dagger and slowly dig up." "Okay." Ling Yunfei nodded. Although the efficiency was not very good, it was indeed the safest way. 2 hours later, the two finally returned to the ground. It was quiet all around. They did not see the 12 clan elders. Obviously they had left. 2 hours had passed. Qin Feiyang's injuries had not healed, but he could still move. Ling Yunfei glanced at the dark forest and asked, "What do we do now?" "Find them." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly and said, "They can't go to Black Bear City. They must be hiding somewhere nearby. Let's go to the river and find their footprints." Ling Yunfei nodded. Dozens of breaths later, the two quietly came to the edge of the forest and looked towards the river. Through the hazy moonlight, they saw that there was no one by the river, so they walked over. After looking carefully, they soon found the footprints of 13 people. After some confirmation, the two concluded that they followed the river and went downstream. The two followed all the way. 13 people traveling together was a big target. It was easy to distinguish, so they would not lose track. Half an hour later, Qin Feiyang and the other person followed the footprints and entered a dense forest. Soon in the depths of the forest, they found a valley. The valley was still faintly illuminated by fire. At this moment, it was already late at night. The waning moon was in the sky, and the stars were twinkling. In the forest, it was dead silent. The two came out of the valley, hid behind a protruding rock, and looked inside. 100 meters away, a bonfire burned brightly, illuminating the entire valley. Above the bonfire, there was a wild boar being roasted. The surface was golden yellow, and oil constantly seeped out from the meat, making sizzling sounds. The fragrance assailed their nostrils. 15 figures sat around the bonfire, drinking and chatting merrily. Sometimes angry curses could even be heard. Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze, frowning. "It is indeed them, but why are there 2 more people?" Ling Yunfei said, looking at their clothes, "They seem to be the guards of the city lord's residence." "City lord?" Qin Feiyang pondered for a while, a trace of killing intent in his eyes, and said in a low voice, "It seems that these people cannot be left alive." Ling Yunfei said, "Let's talk about this later. Let's think about how to get rid of them first." Qin Feiyang looked again. The 2 guards were obviously not weak. Adding on the 13 martial great masters of the Ling family, they could not force them. Suddenly, his heart moved, and he took out the bottle of poison. Seeing this, Ling Yunfei also instantly understood what Qin Feiyang wanted to do, and said in a low voice, "This poison can indeed kill them, but how do we make them drink it?" "I have an idea." Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and said, "I'll be the bait and lure them out of the valley. You take the chance to go in and poison them." Ling Yunfei said, "How can that be? It's too risky, let me be the bait." "Don't worry, they can't catch me." Qin Feiyang did not allow any explanation, and directly stuffed the jade bottle into Ling Yunfei's hands, then turned and ran into the forest without looking back. This bastard, he really likes to show off. Chapter 88. Boom. Crack. After a while, loud noises could be heard from the dense forest outside the valley. Thick and strong trees fell down one by one. The noise was so great that it shocked everyone. What's going on? The 15 people who were drinking suddenly stood up and looked through the entrance of the valley towards the dense forest. But because it was too dark, they couldn't see anything. The oldest old man shouted, "Old 4, old 5, go and take a look. No matter who it is, kill them directly." Understood. The 2 old men nodded and immediately ran towards the entrance of the valley. Not far away, there was a small hill. Qin Feiyang lay in the grass and looked at the entrance of the valley. He frowned when he saw that only 2 people came out. It seemed that this trick didn't work. What else could he do to lure them all out? Right. Am I not the best bait? Qin Feiyang, don't run. He pinched his throat slightly and suddenly roared. What? Qin Feiyang. The 2 old men who came out first rushed towards the forest, as if they were injected with chicken blood. At the same time, the eyes of the people in the valley were also shining. Hurry up, as long as we catch Qin Feiyang, we can not only return to Black Bear City, but also be rewarded by the Lin family of Yin City and King Yin. This is a great opportunity, we can't miss it. Whoosh! More than a dozen people ran out of the valley as if they had taken stimulants, including the 2 guards. Sure enough, I'm the most popular one. Seeing everyone running out, Qin Feiyang's lips curled up into a cold smile. Then he directly entered the ancient castle. When the footsteps were far away, he left the castle and went to meet up with Ling Yunfei. At the same time, Ling Yunfei also quietly slipped into the valley. After pouring the venom into the 15 people's wine jars, he quickly left the valley and hid in his original position. Looking at the dense forest, he couldn't help but worry. Suddenly, a hand appeared behind Ling Yunfei and rested on his shoulder, startling him on the spot. "Don't make a sound, it's me." Qin Feiyang's voice rang out. Ling Yunfei heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "Where are they?" Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "He went to look for Qin Feiyang." Ling Yunfei shook his head and laughed in spite of himself. He said, "Just now, when I saw that only 2 people came out, I thought that the plan would fail. I didn't expect you to be so quick-witted and use Qin Feiyang as bait." How could he have known that the person standing in front of him was Qin Feiyang himself? "I just thought of it at the last minute. Now we'll just wait for them to come back and catch them all in one fell swoop." Qin Feiyang's eyes surged with killing intent. "We chased after it as soon as it roared, but we didn't manage to catch up. How unlucky." It's said that Qin Feiyang is only 15 or 16 years old, but isn't his speed too fast? We can't underestimate him. People who are wanted by the royal family are definitely not simple. Although we didn't find him this time, at least we already know that he is near the Black Bear Mountain. As long as he is near here, he can't escape from our hands. That's right. After dawn, we'll go and look for him carefully. Hundreds of breaths passed. The 15 people walked out of the dense forest, talking as they walked towards the valley. After they entered the valley, Qin Feiyang and the other 2 also followed them in without making a sound. They hid behind the rock from the beginning. The 15 people sat down around the bonfire again. After chatting for a while, the oldest old man stood up with a wine jar and said with a smile, Come, let's celebrate. It wasn't easy to kill those 2 little bastards. We should really celebrate. Tomorrow we'll go to the snake cave, kill that bastard, and dry it into snake jerky to go with wine." The 2 guards also stood up and said with a smile, "Celebrate?" Hiding in the dark, Qin Feiyang and the other person's eyes became extremely cold. The oldest old man laughed and said, "Come, Let's drink to our heart's content tonight. The 15 people held their wine jars and gulped down the wine. Crack. The old man whose arm was cut off by Qin Feiyang suddenly trembled. The wine jar in his hand fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. What's wrong? The poison acted up so quickly. Qin Feiyang and the other person were stunned. They originally thought that the poison would only act up after a while. After all, these people were all martial arts grandmasters. But they didn't expect the poison of the single-horned python to be so terrifying. The real reason was that the old man had lost too much blood. His body was weak and his resistance had decreased. That was why the poison acted up so quickly. Old 8, what's wrong with you? The other 14 people who didn't know the truth looked at the old man in confusion. There's something wrong with this wine. Spit it out. Old 8 growled, and was the first to lie on the ground. His fingers dug into his throat and he vomited. What's wrong? Everyone was puzzled. There's poison. Old 8 shouted. What? The others were shocked. But at this moment, Old 8 screamed and fell to the ground. He was foaming at the mouth and his whole body was twitching nonstop. That's right. It's a sign of poisoning. The rest of the people turned pale. Bang bang. The 2 guards also fell to the ground at the same time. Their hands were clutching their necks, and they were screaming in pain. Their lips were turning black at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was obvious. Their strength was not as strong as the other elders of the Ling family. Now is the time. Hurry up and stop them from taking the antidote pill. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang shouted in a low voice. The 2 of them rushed out from behind the rock almost at the same time. The scene was a mess. No one noticed them. Who has the antidote pill? Take it out quickly. The old man roared. I have. One of the guards shouted with all his strength. The older man rushed over and pulled the qiankuan bag tied to the guard's waist. He was about to take out the antidote pill. Jiang Haotian Ling Yunfei, why are you here? At this moment, one of the elders noticed Qin Feiyang and Jiang Haotian behind him. He suddenly exclaimed and his old face was filled with disbelief. What? The rest of the people were shocked and turned to look. They were not dead. Grab the qiankuan bag. Qin Feiyang shouted explosively. He suddenly stomped on the ground and leaped high into the air like an eagle. The older man suddenly realized and shouted. They are the ones who poisoned us. Hurry up and stop him. There were still 11 people who had not been poisoned. Hearing this, their eyes were filled with killing intent as they leaped up to stop Qin Feiyang. But they had just jumped up. 10 of them screamed and rolled to the ground. Their bodies were twitching and white foam was coming out of their mouths. It was obvious that the poison was acting up. But one of them was fine. Without a doubt. This person and the older man were the 2 two-star martial grandmasters that Ling Yunfei mentioned. Go to hell. He grabbed Qin Feiyang's ankle. Seething with anger, he flung it forcefully. At that moment, Qin Feiyang was like a meteorite. With a bang, he hit a rock beside him. He spat out blood and his ribs were broken on the spot. At the same time, Ling Yunfei took the opportunity to step over the bonfire and pounce on the older man's qiankuan bag. Unfilial son. The older man roared and slapped Ling Yunfei's left shoulder. Bang. Immediately, Ling Yunfei was sent flying by the slap. He spat out blood and his right shoulder was fractured. His skin was torn and his flesh was badly mutilated. His consciousness was also fainting quickly. I'll kill you later. The older man smiled and took out a detoxification pill. He was about to consume it. But at this moment, Ling Yunfei gritted his teeth and pounced on the older man. He waved his left hand and slapped the detoxification pill and the qiankuan bag away. He then bit the older man's ear. He had actually bitten off the ear. The pain made the older man's face contort and he howled in pain. Seeing this, the man who seriously injured Qin Feiyang hurriedly ran towards the 2 of them. At the same time, Qin Feiyang also gritted his teeth and endured the pain. He kicked his legs and pounced on the man, pushing him to the ground. Then he took out the chang shui and stabbed it into the back of the man's head without hesitation. That man died on the spot. You 2 damn little bastards, go to hell. The older man roared at the same time. Immediately after, Ling Yunfei was once again sent flying by his slap. He flew several meters away and hit the ground. He immediately closed his eyes. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. "Old thing, I'll kill you." Qin Feiyang's eyes were red. Holding the changshui, he pounced on the older man like a mad beast. His whole body was full of hostility. Seeing this, the old man ignored Qin Feiyang and ran towards the detoxification pill. But after running a few steps, he staggered and fell to the ground. White foam came out of his mouth. His body also began to twitch. His eyes were full of unwillingness as he struggled to crawl towards the detoxification pill. The detoxification pill was about to be in his hands. However, at this time, Qin Feiyang ran over and grabbed the detoxification pill. "Give it to me, I beg you." The older man immediately begged in despair. But Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear to him. He quickly ran to Ling Yunfei and stuffed the detoxification pill into Ling Yunfei's mouth. Because the single-horned python's poison would seep into the blood. Ling Yunfei had just bitten off the older man's ear and must have swallowed the blood. If he did not take the detoxification pill in time, he would also be poisoned. Immediately after, he hurriedly checked on Ling Yunfei's condition. Fortunately, his heart was not hurt. He was lucky to survive and now he just fainted. After giving Ling Yunfei the healing pill and bone-replenishing pill, Qin Feiyang got up and turned to look at the older man. This person did not give up and crawled towards the Qianquan bag. Qin Feiyang grabbed changshui and walked over step by step. The pain caused by his broken ribs made his killing intent even stronger. The older man heard the footsteps and begged as he crawled. "Please do me a favor and save me." "Save you?" Qin Feiyang sneered and stepped on the Qianquan bag, saying, "A few hours ago, when you killed me and Ling Yunfei, why didn't you show mercy? You want me to save you? Fine, as long as you can crawl over, I'll put the detoxification pill into your mouth." The older man crawled with all his might. But after crawling for a long time, he was still in his original position. He had no strength left, only despair and resentment. Qin Feiyang walked over, looked down at the older man and said, "Actually, I have to thank you. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have been able to catch all of you in one fell swoop." A trace of doubt appeared in the older man's resentful eyes. Qin Feiyang said, "Do you know what was in the snake cave? There was a single-horned anaconda. I almost lost my life in order to kill it. But thankfully, not only did I succeed in killing it, I even obtained its venom." When the older man heard that, it was too late for regrets as he stuttered. "How did you poison us?" Qin Feiyang sneered. "You're not unfamiliar with the name Qin Feiyang, right?" The older man was enlightened. Qin Feiyang continued, "To tell you the truth, I'm actually the Qin Feiyang you're looking for. Jiang Haoyan is just a fake name." The elderly man's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "Can you die in peace now?" Qin Feiyang bent down and grinned, revealing a mouthful of pearly white teeth. With a swing of changshui, a cut appeared on the older man's neck. Blood splattered everywhere, dyeing Qin Feiyang's body red. Chapter 89. The old man died. The others were also poisoned to death. This also meant that the entire army had been wiped out. Qin Feiyang stood up and looked at the corpses around him, but his gaze became colder and colder. These people were at most cannon fodder. The one who really deserved to die was the city lord. He sat by the bonfire, took a healing pill and a bone-replenishing pill, looked at the rising flames, and fell into deep thought. As time passed, one breath after another, the bonfire gradually extinguished. The fragrant roasted boar was also burnt. But Qin Feiyang was completely unaware, as if he was an old monk meditating. Gradually, the horizon began to brighten. But there was no sun. The sky was filled with thick clouds, as if a storm was coming, causing people to feel inexplicably depressed. At this time, Ling Yunfei finally woke up, opened his eyes, and looked at the sky in confusion. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly got up. As if facing a great enemy, he vigilantly scanned his surroundings. "Don't be nervous, they're all dead." Qin Feiyang's voice sounded like a reassuring pill. Ling Yunfei immediately heaved a sigh of relief. "It hurts." After relaxing, An intense pain swept over him like a tide, causing him to grimace in pain. Qin Feiyang also restrained his mind, stood up and looked at Ling Yunfei, and said with a faint smile, "Your injuries are too serious, it's best not to do any strenuous activities." Ling Yunfei asked, "What about you?" Qin Feiyang said, "I'm fine." However, his pale face was enough to show that his situation was not optimistic. Ling Yunfei looked at him doubtfully and said in a deep voice, "If the city lord finds out that we are not dead, he will definitely continue to deal with us. Tell me, shouldn't we make the first move?" Qin Feiyang shook his head. He is not only the city lord of Black Bear City, but also a genuine war king. How could it be so easy to kill him? Ling Yunfei frowned. This was indeed a difficult problem. Qin Feiyang said, "Let's go, we'll talk about it when we get back." After collecting the Qianquan bags of the 15 people, the two of them left the valley. However, not long after the two of them left, another guard of the city lord's mansion ran towards the valley. With such a good opportunity last night, Jiang Haoyan should have already been killed by them. He muttered to himself with a bright smile on his face. However, when he entered the valley and saw the 15 corpses, his smile froze. He hurriedly ran over and examined them carefully. In the end, his expression was filled with shock. They were all dead. Who did it? He glanced around and didn't find anyone else, so he immediately returned home. How is this possible? City Lord's mansion. The city lord suddenly stood up and glared at the guard. His face was filled with disbelief. The guard knelt on the ground and said respectfully, "This subordinate saw it with his own eyes." It's absolutely true. What a joke. 2 9-star martial masters, 11 1-star martial great lords, and 2 2-star martial great lords. With such a lineup, who can kill them? Unless Luo Xiong and the others personally take action. The city lord raged in disbelief. The guard said, "Sir, it can't be Luo Xiong and the others." "What do you mean?" The city lord frowned. The guard said, "They were all poisoned to death. With Luo Xiong's strength, there was no need to poison them. If I'm not wrong, it should be Jiang Haoyan and Ling Yunfei." "Impossible," the city lord roared. "It can't be wrong, because I found a few sky blue hairs on the body of the Ling family's grand elder. In the entire Black Bear City, only Ling Yunfei's hair is sky blue," the guard said. "You can't even kill 2 little bastards who are still wet behind the ears. What a bunch of useless trash." The city lord was furious. It was not easy to create such a good opportunity, but in the end it failed. The guard said, "Sir, don't be impatient. According to my observations, Jiang Haoyan and Ling Yunfei must be seriously injured. If we send people to intercept them now, we will definitely be able to kill them halfway." The city lord's heart skipped a beat as he asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes." The guard nodded. The city lord pondered for a moment and nodded. "Okay, you go to the Jiang family and the Mu family now and tell the 2 patriarchs that as long as they can kill Jiang Haoyan and Ling Yunfei, this city lord will pretend not to know about their massacre of the Ling family." The city lord is wise. The guard smiled flatteringly, then bowed and retreated. A lake with a radius of 100 feet, lying in a mountain stream. The scales rippled, incomparably clear. On the shore, Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei stood on a bluestone, washing the blood on their bodies. "Sigh, it's really like a tiger being bullied by a dog." Ling Yunfei sighed deeply, both angry and helpless. Along the way, from time to time, fierce beasts jumped out to block their way. If they were in their peak state, they wouldn't be afraid. However, he was still injured. Especially Ling Yunfei, he couldn't even walk too fast. Fighting with those fierce beasts, he naturally couldn't avoid injuries. Fortunately, both of them had a lot of healing pills. Otherwise, it would be a problem whether they could survive until now. Qin Feiyang glanced at the lake while washing, and said in a deep voice, "Don't be in a hurry to complain, there are probably a lot of water beasts lurking in this lake, be careful." Dong. Hua. Before his voice died away, there was actually a fierce beast rushing out of the water, setting off a few meters high wave. It opened its bloody mouth and bit at the 2. That fierce beast was 5 or 6 meters long, covered in dense scales, and 2 rows of saw-like fangs, revealing an unparalleled ferocious aura. Saw-toothed crocodile. Qin Feiyang's face changed, and hurriedly dragged Ling Yunfei, and ran towards the jungle behind them. Bang! The saw-toothed crocodile missed and fell to the ground, shaking the earth. Immediately, its four limbs moved, making a rumbling sound, chasing after Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei. Its speed was not slower than the two of them. Moreover, wherever it passed, the rocks and trees in front of it were directly knocked away. It was incomparably powerful. Why are we so unlucky to encounter such a monster? Ling Yunfei was so angry that he cursed. The saw-toothed crocodile and the black-scale crocodile were social creatures. But the degree of terror was far beyond that of the black-scale crocodile. Not only were its scales hard and hard to break, its fangs could easily bite through steel. Most importantly, it was an amphibious creature. Judging from the speed of this saw-toothed crocodile, it was at least an 8-star martial master. Qin Feiyang could only use the smoke-gathering steps to be on par with its speed. Roar! When the two of them ran to the side of a big tree, the withered branches and rotten leaves 3 meters in front of them suddenly opened, and another saw-toothed crocodile swooped out, fiercely biting at the two of them. Heart-lock killing fist. Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold as he punched. Bang! The saw-toothed crocodile was blown away on the spot, and its heart was instantly shattered. You also know the heart-lock killing fist? Ling Yunfei was stunned. However, he immediately realized that he had asked a very stupid question. His heart-lock killing fist was taught by this person. As the master of the killing fist, how could Qin Feiyang not know it? Don't talk nonsense. Pay attention to the surroundings carefully. There could be saw-toothed crocodiles lurking anywhere. Qin Feiyang shouted in a low voice. The two of them continued to flee. Roar! When the saw-toothed crocodile behind them saw that its companion had been killed, it immediately raised its head and roared sorrowfully. Roar! Boom! Crash! This time, it was as if they had poked a hornet's nest. In the lake behind them, saw-toothed crocodiles kept jumping out of the water. Under the withered leaves in the forest, in the grass and in the bushes, saw-toothed crocodiles of different sizes kept rushing out. It was almost in the blink of an eye. There were no less than 50 saw-toothed crocodiles around Qin Feiyang and his companion. In the distance, there were groups of saw-toothed crocodiles surging towards them, crushing everything in their path. The sound of the rumbling was deafening. Seeing this scene, even with Qin Feiyang's temperament, he could not help but shudder with fear. He said, "It seems that we have unfortunately broken into the nest of saw-toothed crocodiles." Ling Yunfei glanced around and shouted, "There are fewer saw-toothed crocodiles on the right. Let's break through from the right." "All right." Qin Feiyang nodded. At the moment of life and death, the two of them did not care about their injuries and attacked with all their might. They were about to escape from the encirclement. Roar! Boom! But at this moment, a short mountain in front of them suddenly collapsed. A 10-meter-long saw-toothed crocodile rushed out of the dust. Its huge body crushed everything in its way, and its roar shook the heavens and the earth. Those big trees that could only be hugged by 3 or 4 people were bitten off by it. They were like dead wood. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang and his companion immediately turned around and fled for their lives. Because the size of the saw-toothed crocodile would constantly increase with the increase of its cultivation. In other words, the bigger the size, the stronger the strength. And this saw-toothed crocodile was 10 meters long. It definitely had the battle strength of a martial ancestor. However, after running for a few steps, another 10-meter-long saw-toothed crocodile appeared in front of them. At the same time, on the left, on the right, there was another one. Their length was more than 10 meters. They were like small mountains, fierce and impressive. A total of 4 martial ancestor-level beasts made Qin Feiyang and his companion dumbfounded on the spot. In addition to these 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles, there were hundreds of martial master-level saw-toothed crocodiles. How could they escape? Roar! 2 7-meter-long saw-toothed crocodiles rushed over. Heartlock killing fist. Qin Feiyang and his companion growled at the same time, and punched with all their strength. After killing the 2 saw-toothed crocodiles, Ling Yunfei shouted, "What do we do now? Besides killing our way out, what else can we do?" Qin Feiyang's eyes were gloomy. He decisively took out the Chang Shui and rushed to the left. If they wanted to escape, they could only avoid the 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles. Chang Shui was invincible and easily tore through the scales of the saw-toothed crocodiles. With the help of perfect martial arts, the two of them killed their way forward. They were invincible. Roar. The 2 king saw-toothed crocodiles on the left and the front roared. Their 2 giant tails were raised high and fiercely slapped towards Qin Feiyang and his companion. No, we can't kill our way out. Qin Feiyang's face sank. He didn't dare to stay any longer. He grabbed Ling Yunfei and entered the castle. Boom. The 2 giant tails fell, and the ground cracked on the spot. Roar. Seeing the 2 humans disappear into thin air, the 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles roared in anger. Their giant tails crazily smashed the ground here. After a while, the place was fragmented and dust covered the sky and the sun. At the same time, hundreds of meters away, more than 20 people stood on top of a mountain and looked in the direction of the lake. Their eyes were full of surprise. The leaders were 2 old men. Both of them had white hair and white beards, but their faces were ruddy and hale. The 2 of them were the grand elders of the Mu clan and the Jiang clan. The others were also martial ancestor experts of the 2 clans. The grand elder of the Jiang clan suddenly withdrew his gaze and turned to a middle-aged man beside him. He ordered, "Jiang-san, go and see what happened over there. If it's Jiang Haoyin and Ling Yunfei, don't alert them." Chapter 90. Inside the castle, Qin Feiyang swallowed the healing pill and listened carefully to the movements outside. Ling Yunfei, on the other hand, looked around suspiciously. A moment later, only then did he come back to his senses. He turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked, "What is this place? How did we get in?" This reaction was exactly the same as when Qin Feiyang first entered the castle. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly and said, "You just need to know that it's safe to hide here. Don't ask anything else." This guy is even more mysterious than I imagined. Ling Yunfei muttered to himself. This was simply too magical. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that there was such a place in the world. About a few hundred breaths passed. The rumbling outside finally stopped. Following closely, the sound of footsteps could be heard as they gradually disappeared into the distance. Ling Yunfei asked, "Have they left?" Qin Feiyang nodded. Ling Yunfei asked again, "When are we going out?" After pondering for a moment, Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, "There must be some sawtooth crocodiles hiding here. It's best to recuperate first before going out." "All right." Ling Yunfei nodded. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he said, "Oh right, in a month the people from the Martial Imperial Hall will come to Black Bear City. At that time, I'm afraid we'll have to separate." There was a deep sense of reluctance in his tone. Although they hadn't known each other for long, in Ling Yunfei's heart, Qin Feiyang was his first friend in his life. Therefore he cherished it very much. Martial Imperial Hall? Ling Yunfei was slightly startled and laughed. "No, because in a month the people from the Danwang Hall will also come. At that time, maybe we can even go to Yen City together." "Is that so? That's great." Ling Yunfei was immediately overjoyed. "Hee, hurry up and recuperate." Qin Feiyang smiled. He didn't want to waste any more time. He walked to the iron box and opened it with a drop of blood. He opened the book and continued to copy the 4th stroke. Ling Yunfei's face was full of suspicion as he witnessed this scene. Qin Feiyang glanced at him and said, "There's nothing to see. Quickly focus on recuperating from your injuries. While you're at it, refine the energy-gathering pills and cultivate." "Oh." Ling Yunfei responded but did not leave. He stood at the side, wanting to say something but hesitated. "What happened?" Qin Feiyang was puzzled. With a red face, Ling Yunfei looked at him awkwardly and asked, "Do you have any extra qi-gathering pills? My qi-amassing elixirs are all in the martial arts hall's cultivation room." Qin Feiyang was stunned. Ling Yunfei hurriedly said, "Don't worry. I don't lack energy-gathering pills now. When I go back, I'll immediately pay you back in double." Qin Feiyang's face twitched. He was speechless and said, "I'm not worried that you can't pay me back." I just don't understand. Why did you put the energy-gathering pills in the cultivation room? Shouldn't you carry the resources for cultivation with you? I wanted to, but the hall master didn't allow it. Ling Yunfei's face was full of helplessness. Why? Qin Feiyang was even more puzzled. The hall master was worried that I would give them away privately, Ling Yunfei said. Qin Feiyang was stunned. There was actually such a thing in the world? Ling Yunfei smiled and said, in fact, it's okay. Other disciples can only get a few hundred energy-gathering pills every month. If it's not enough, they have to earn it themselves. But I can get as many as I want. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang started to feel envious. Because in this way Ling Yunfei only needed to focus on cultivation. He didn't need to worry about resources at all. Unlike the Dan Hall, where he had to find the ingredients himself. Take these energy-gathering pills and use them. He took out a qianquan pouch and threw it to Ling Yunfei. There were at least 20 to 30,000 energy-gathering pills in it. So many? Ling Yunfei caught it in his hand and looked at it. He was instantly dumbfounded. Don't worry. It's for you. You don't have to return it. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. He turned back to look at the iron book and continued to copy. He's really generous. Ling Yunfei shook his head and murmured. This person must have a strong background behind him. He didn't know that a few months ago, Qin Feiyang was still living a poor life. A dozen gold coins was a huge fortune for him. It wasn't out of Qin Feiyang's expectation. Some of the saw-toothed crocodiles outside returned to the lake and sank to the bottom. Some of them continued to hide in the forest. On the surface, this place looked extremely peaceful. There was no danger at all. However, as long as one walked into this area, no matter who it was, they would fall into a desperate situation. Jiang Sun was a very unlucky person. He was ordered to investigate the situation. However, when he arrived, other than the desolated land, he didn't even see a shadow. However, when he entered the attack range of the saw-toothed crocodiles, the hidden saw-toothed crocodiles jumped out and pounced on him. The 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles also appeared immediately. Although he had the cultivation of a 1-star martial ancestor, he still paid the price of an arm to escape from this area. Similarly, Qin Feiyang also heard the commotion outside. Although he didn't know if they were coming for him, at least he knew that there were other people in this mountain range. Moreover, they were quite strong. Time passed quickly. The next morning, Qin Feiyang closed the iron book and turned to look at Ling Yunfei. He warned, after we go out, don't stop at all. Quickly leave this area. Yes. Ling Yunfei nodded. In fact, their injuries had already healed last night. However, in the face of the saw-toothed crocodiles who were good at camouflage and hiding, it was obviously not realistic to break out at night. Therefore, the two of them chose to break out during the day. Today was also a cloudy day. Phew. Qin Feiyang kept taking deep breaths. Although he was mentally prepared, he still couldn't help but feel nervous. After a few breaths, he let out a long breath, grabbed Ling Yunfei and instantly appeared outside. Whoosh! The two of them didn't stop at all. They used the smoke-gathering steps and the essence-gathering steps and rushed in the direction of Black Bear City. Roar! A series of deafening roars could be heard. The 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles appeared again, but on the left and right sides of Qin Feiyang. In front, there were only some ordinary saw-toothed crocodiles blocking the way. But even so, they still couldn't be careless. Because the speed of the saw-toothed crocodiles was much faster than them. If they delayed a little, they would be caught up. Clang! Qin Feiyang took out the Chang Shui. Ling Yunfei used the Heartlock killing fist, and every move was fatal. The two of them seemed to have transformed into human-shaped Tyrannosaurus Rex. They cooperated perfectly and crazily killed a bloody path. However, such a wanton slaughter completely enraged the 4 saw-toothed crocodiles. With an astonishing murderous aura, they led hundreds of crocodiles and chased after them. Wherever they passed, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked, leaving behind a mess. Hundreds of meters away, they could feel the earthquake. Why is there a sudden earthquake? Could it be a beast tide? The people of the Jiang and Mu families were still looking for Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei nearby. When they heard the movement, they were very surprised. Let's go and take a look. The grand elder of the Jiang family waved his hand and more than 20 people immediately ran over. It's the saw-toothed crocodiles. When he saw the crocodiles, Jiang Sen's face suddenly turned pale. Why are the saw-toothed crocodiles out in full force? Everyone was puzzled. Look, isn't that Jiang Haotian and Ling Yunfei? Someone suddenly exclaimed. The rest of the people looked over, and immediately saw Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei in front of the crocodiles. It's really them. So the crocodiles' riot yesterday must be because of them. It's unbelievable that they dared to provoke these beasts. What do we do now? We don't have to do anything. We just have to watch because sooner or later, they will be torn apart by the crocodiles. More than 20 people stood side by side on a small hill with their hands crossed in front of their chests. Their faces were full of schadenfreude. While escaping, Ling Yunfei suddenly noticed them. His pupils shrank and he said in a low voice, "Why are they here?" Qin Feiyang looked over and frowned. Could it be that the people who appeared yesterday were them? His eyes flashed and he said in a low voice, "Let's go over." Okay. Ling Yunfei nodded. The two of them turned abruptly and ran toward the people from the Jiang and Mu families. Seniors, hurry up and act according to the plan. Let's catch them all in one fell swoop. Qin Feiyang shouted anxiously as he ran. What plan? Why don't I know? Ling Yunfei was stunned and looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. The people from the Jiang and Mu families were also puzzled. Why are you still standing there? Hurry up and do it. Otherwise Ling Yunfei and I will die. Are you planning to leave us in the lurch? Don't forget that you asked me and Ling Yunfei to lure them here. You can't do this. At most, I won't take any of the gold coins after killing them. I only beg you to save me. Qin Feiyang kept shouting. The people from the Jiang and Mu families were even more puzzled. Was there something wrong with this little beast's brain? However, they didn't realize that the eyes of the 4 king sawtooth crocodiles had already locked onto them. Their huge eyes flashed with a frightening light. Seniors, please help us. Although Ling Yunfei didn't know what was going on, he was very cooperative and asked the 20 people for help. His tone and expression were very sincere. Help! The people from the Jiang and Mu family sneered. Jiang's son was extremely scared. He urged, Grand Elder, the strength of the 4 king sawtooth crocodiles is unfathomable. Let's go. The Grand Elder of the Jiang family didn't give the order. He turned to the Grand Elder of the Mu family. The Grand Elder of the Mu family said, Don't make unnecessary sacrifices. All right, let's retreat. The Grand Elder of the Jiang family waved his hand. The 20 people immediately turned around and ran into the forest, quickly disappearing. Just as they turned around, Qin Feiyang grabbed Ling Yunfei and entered the castle. However, the 4 king sawtooth crocodiles didn't stop chasing. They led a group of their little brothers and chased after the Jiang and Mu families. Ha! Where are Jiang Haotian and Ling Yunfei? The Grand Elder of the Mu family looked back and suddenly turned pale with fright. Weren't the two of them just now? How could they suddenly disappear into thin air? The others looked back and were also very surprised. Something's not right. They're gone. Shouldn't the crocodiles have stopped? Why are they still running here now? Not good. The crocodiles are coming for us. I understand. Jiang Haotian said those strange words just now to mislead the 4 king sawtooth crocodiles. They must think that we're with Jiang Haotian now. This little bastard is really scheming. Retreat. Chapter 91. Behind the group of crocodiles, Qin Feiyang and Mu Haotian appeared out of thin air again. Hearing the angry curses coming from afar, Ling Yunfei laughed mischievously. He gave Qin Feiyang a thumbs up and said, This move of yours is truly ruthless. It's impossible not to admire it. Qin Feiyang grinned and said, Now it's our turn to watch the show. Let's go. The two of them stepped forward and followed behind. We can't keep running like this. Let's attack and kill them all. Okay, let's end this quickly. After running for a while, the people from the Jiang and Mu families made up their minds and turned to attack the group of crocodiles. A fierce battle quickly unfolded in the forest. Jiang Haotian, who do you think will win this battle? It should be the Jiang and Mu families. After all, they are both martial arts ancestors. That makes sense. Although the 4 king-level sawtooth crocodiles have unparalleled battle power, the other king-level sawtooth crocodiles can only be used as cannon fodder when facing martial arts ancestors. That's right. But we can be sure that the Jiang and Mu families will suffer heavy casualties in the end. A few hundred meters away, Qin Feiyang and Mu Haoyan sat comfortably on a small hill. They looked at the battlefield in the distance and commented. After watching for a while, Qin Feiyang turned to look at Ling Yunfei and asked, "Do you have wine with you?" "Yes." Ling Yunfei nodded and asked suspiciously, "I thought you don't drink." Qin Feiyang smiled evilly. "The situation is different. When we are doing business, we can't drink. But now we are watching a show. It's more interesting to have wine." "That makes sense." Ling Yunfei nodded and took out 2 palm-sized wine jars from his Qiankuan bag. He threw one to Qin Feiyang and kept the other for himself. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and opened the wine jar. He shouted at the people from the Jiang and Mu families, "Seniors, quickly kill them. I will treat you to wine later." Ling Yunfei was stunned. Was he trying to make them angry? But it was quite interesting. He also picked up the wine jug, raised his head and took a big gulp. He roared, "Refreshing, this is too refreshing. Uncles, if you're tired, come and have a drink. Only when you're full will you be motivated." The people from the Jiang and Mu clans looked at the two of them and were instantly enraged. They were fighting with their lives on the line, but those 2 little bastards were leisurely drinking wine? Who was the culprit who provoked the crocodiles? If this could be tolerated, what could not be tolerated? The 2 black-clothed men rushed towards the 2 of them, carrying a monstrous rage. But at this moment, a king saw-toothed crocodile suddenly raised its huge tail and slammed it towards the 2 of them. Following a miserable cry, the 2 lost their lives, smashed into a bloody paste. Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei looked at each other in disbelief. Who would have thought that this king sawtooth crocodile would be able to grasp the opportunity? Not only was it ferocious, but it was also so smart. The people from the Jiang and Mu clans would definitely suffer a great loss this time. Qin Feiyang raised the corner of his mouth and said regretfully, "Seniors, I know you like to drink, but there's no need to be so anxious. Look, if you're not careful you'll die. For a mouthful of wine, is it worth it?" Ling Yunfei sighed. "It's not worth it. Don't be so anxious, okay? We won't drink it all. We'll leave some for you." "Bastard!" The 2 of them echoed each other, causing the people from the 2 clans to explode with anger. "Saw-toothed crocodile, listen to this old man, we're not with them. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. If you want to settle the score, you should look for them." The great elder of the Jiang and Mu clans roared in exasperation. They had been in Black Bear City for so many years, but they had never been so aggrieved like today. The 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles roared again and again, crazily bombarding them. However, there were also a small number of saw-toothed crocodiles that turned around and charged towards Qin Feiyang. However, as long as the king saw-toothed crocodiles did not attack, the 2 of them had the ability to easily deal with them. The fierce battle continued. The land within a radius of hundreds of meters was mercilessly destroyed. Blood converged into a stream, gurgling and flowing. The smell of blood was pungent. Broken corpses and broken arms were scattered all over the mountains. This place had become an Azura hell. A few hundred breaths passed. Of the hundreds of saw-toothed crocodiles, only a few dozen were left, and the others were covered in wounds, including the 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles. More than half of the people from the Jiang and Mu clans were injured or dead. But overall, the Jiang and Mu clans had the absolute advantage. Seeing this situation, Qin Feiyang turned to look at Ling Yunfei and said, "Let's go." Ling Yunfei nodded. Roar! 2 saw-toothed crocodiles pounced over. The 2 of them used the heart-lock killing fist to quickly finish them off, and were ready to turn around and leave. But at this moment, the 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles roared at the same time, shaking the mountains and rivers. Roar! Following closely, another particularly loud beast roar suddenly exploded in the direction of the lake, shaking the sky, as if responding to the 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles. Hearing the beast roar, Qin Feiyang and the Jiang and Mu clans were all surprised. Then, the earth trembled, making a loud bang. Could there be more saw-toothed crocodiles? Qin Feiyang and the Grand Elder looked at each other, and a trace of horror crept up in their eyes. Listening to this movement, if it was really a saw-toothed crocodile, it was probably more terrifying than the 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles. Let's go and see. Qin Feiyang roared. The two of them sped towards the lake at full speed. Running to die? What a pair of ignorant little bastards. Seeing this, the Grand Elder of the Mu clan could not help but sneer. If it was really in existence more terrifying than the 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles, running there was simply courting death. Don't worry about them, let's retreat, the Grand Elder of the Jiang clan shouted. However, the 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles and dozens of ordinary saw-toothed crocodiles, at this moment, were crazily entangled with them, even disregarding their own lives. This abnormal change made the Jiang and Mu clans even more uneasy and anxious. On the other side, Qin Feiyang and the Grand Elder of the Mu clan were running, and a huge monster suddenly entered their sight. It was actually a saw-toothed crocodile, but its size was twice as big as the 4 king saw-toothed crocodiles. A short mountain of dozens of meters was actually blown away by it. Such a terrifying power was simply appalling. Without a doubt, this saw-toothed crocodile was the real king of the crocodile group. Qin Feiyang did not dare to hesitate at all, and led Ling Yunfei into the castle. The saw-toothed crocodile king was tyrannical and boundless. As if a peerless beast was born. No matter what was in front of it, it was trampled. After it left, Qin Feiyang and the Grand Elder of the Mu clan appeared again, and looking at the huge back, they could not help but feel their scalps tingle. Ling Yunfei swallowed his saliva and asked, "Do you want to go and take a look? If you want to die, go by yourself, don't drag me along." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. The saw-toothed crocodile king was definitely not to be trifled with. Moreover, after it finished off the Jiang and Mu clans, it would definitely come for them. So the most important thing now was not to watch the show, but to escape. But with the saw-toothed crocodile king in front of them, they had to change their route. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, "Let's go back the way we came and follow the river back to Black Bear City." "That's the only way," Ling Yunfei said helplessly. A moment later, the two of them came to the lake again. The saw-toothed crocodiles came out in full force, so now, this place was safer than any other place. They stood on top of a hill with their hands on their knees. They scanned the lake below and gasped for breath. The lake did not change, but the lake shore had been trampled beyond recognition by the crocodile group. On the left shore, there was a big pit more than 10 meters deep. If he guessed correctly, that big pit should be the place where the saw-toothed crocodile king was hiding. Fortunately, we didn't pass by that place in the beginning, otherwise the consequences would be unimaginable. Ling Yunfei looked at the big pit, and said with a lingering fear. Qin Feiyang let out a long breath, stood up straight, and said, "Don't stay any longer, let's go quickly." Although there was no saw-toothed crocodile, when he thought of the experience of the past few days, he couldn't wait to leave this place immediately. Actually, we shouldn't have taken a detour. Ling Yunfei was a little angry. He thought that this road was very safe, but in the end, he almost lost his life. It was not worth it. "Stop complaining, let's go," Qin Feiyang urged and turned to leave. Ling Yunfei was about to follow. But suddenly, he seemed to have discovered something, and his gaze fell on the big pit again. In the big pit, there were some black things, but they were covered by the soil and were somewhat difficult to distinguish. Ling Yunfei's eyes had a trace of surprise and said, "Jiang Haoyan, look at what that is." Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned, turned around and walked to Ling Yunfei's side. Looking along, he couldn't tell what it was. "Let's go and take a look?" Ling Yunfei asked. "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. The two of them jumped down and walked over carefully. Although it was calm on the surface, who knew if there was any hidden danger? Therefore, it was better to be cautious. After arriving at the big pit, seeing that there was no danger, the two of them jumped into the big pit and looked at the black thing. It looked a little like iron, but their feeling told them that it was not iron. Qin Feiyang reached out and knocked hard, and it actually made a metal-like sound. Could it really be an unknown divine iron? If so, then this time, they had picked up a treasure. The two of them worked hard to dig the soil, and soon they were sweating profusely. But when the black thing was completely revealed, the two of them wanted to cry, but had no tears. They even had an impulse to curse. This was not divine iron at all, but the old shell of the jagged-toothed crocodile king. Bastard, I was happy for nothing. Ling Yunfei was furious. He grabbed the old shell and threw it out of the big pit. With a thud, it fell into the lake. Although the old shell was very hard, it was useless. How can there be so many treasures in the world? Let's go. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. He glanced at the pit and was about to jump up. However, that glance made his body and mind tremble. He hurriedly looked down and immediately saw a small tree in the soil. The strange thing was that the small tree was only a finger tall, and it was red all over. There were no branches on the trunk, only 3 fingernail-sized leaves, like clusters of flames. Although the small tree was small, it was full of spirituality. At first glance, one could tell that it was not an ordinary thing. Why does it look a little familiar? Ling Yunfei looked at the small tree, full of surprise. This is the red glass tree. Chapter 92. Red Fire Glass Tree. Hearing this name, Ling Yunfei's body and mind were also shocked. This thing, it could only be described as a treasure, because the leaves of the red fire glass tree were the main medicinal ingredients for refining the red fire glass pill. The red fire glass pill had a very amazing magical effect. Any warrior below the War King, as long as they took a red fire glass pill, their cultivation realm would instantly increase by 1 step. For example, if Qin Feiyang took one now, he would immediately break through to a 5-star martial master. Who wouldn't be tempted by such a magical effect? It was no exaggeration to say that once the news of the birth of this red fire glass tree spread out, it would definitely set off a bloody storm in Black Bear City. However, nothing could be perfect. Everyone could only take 1 red fire glass pill in their life. If they took a second one, it would lose its effect and it would be a waste. But even so, it was enough to make anyone go crazy. Qin Feiyang squatted beside the small tree. His eyes were shining brightly. They never thought that they would encounter such a treasure. It was really hard to say what happened in life. If it weren't for Ling Yunfei, who threw the old shell of the sawtooth crocodile king out in anger, they would definitely have brushed past this small tree. No one would have thought that such a treasure was hidden under this old shell. Roar! A loud and clear roar of a beast was heard. The sawtooth crocodile king was back? The two were surprised. Ling Yunfei hurriedly said, "Pull it out quickly, let's retreat." Qin Feiyang grabbed the trunk, uprooted it, and kept it in his Qianquan bag. Immediately, the two jumped out of the pit and ran towards the forest without looking back. Bang! Accompanied by a series of rumbling sounds, the sawtooth crocodile king returned with the 4 king sawtooth crocodiles. But when it returned to the pit, it found that the red fire glass tree did not fall. It immediately flew into a rage and roared. Hearing the roar, Qin Feiyang was so scared that they broke out in cold sweat. They were afraid that the sawtooth crocodile king would chase after them, so they fled for their lives. The two of them didn't stop until they reached the river. Without a care for his image, he sat down on the ground, sweating profusely and panting like a cow. "Do you think the people from the Jiang and Mu families are all dead?" Ling Yunfei asked. "Is there even a need to ask? Not a single one will be left." Qin Feiyang said. "Although we were ambushed, it was worth it to get a red fire glass tree." Ling Yunfei laughed. "Indeed." Qin Feiyang nodded with a smile on his face. In the end, the person they should thank was the city lord. If he hadn't schemed to harm them, how could they have obtained this treasure? As the saying goes, one should know how to repay kindness. In the future, he would surely repay this person properly. Who? Ling Yunfei let out a long sigh. He moved closer to Qin Feiyang and asked, "When we go back, who do you plan to ask to help you refine the red fire glass pill?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and said speechlessly, "I know how to refine pills myself. Why do I need other people's help? Moreover, do you think that other people will help you for free? Naive. If he really asked other people to help him, he would definitely get a share. It wasn't worth it. You. Ling Yunfei looked at him with a doubtful face. Obviously, he didn't believe that Qin Feiyang could refine pills. What's wrong with me? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Ling Yunfei said with disdain. You've only been in the pill hall for a month. I guess you can't even refine the body-tempering pill, let alone the red fireglass pill. Don't waste the leaves of the red fireglass tree. Qin Feiyang's face twitched. So in this guy's eyes he was so unbearable. Fine. He didn't want to talk nonsense. He would use his actions to prove it. Ling Yunfei laughed and said, Don't be angry. Brother, I'm just stating facts. Oh right, I have something to ask you. What? Qin Feiyang said. Ling Yunfei asked curiously. Who refined the supreme grade pills that Fatso sold last time? I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Ling Yunfei said. You really don't know? Or are you just pretending? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and said, Then if I tell you that I refined them, would you believe me? I'd be a fool if I believed you. Ling Yunfei rolled his eyes. He had never seen such a narcissistic person. He stood up and said, I haven't gone back for a few days. Mother must be worried about me. Let's go back. I don't plan to go back. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, Don't want to go back. Then where are you going? Ling Yunfei was stunned and looked at him doubtfully. If we go back now, when the city lord finds out that we're not dead, he will definitely find ways to deal with us. Instead of suffering this, it's better to hide and meditate for a month. When the people from the Danwang Hall come, we can go back. Qin Feiyang said. He didn't have so much time to waste on insignificant people. It seems to make sense, but if I don't go back, my mother... Ling Yunfei hesitated for a moment, gritted his teeth and said, Forget it. When we go back, we'll slowly apologize to her. Next, the two hid in the castle and began to meditate. The Serpentine Crocodile King was still in the mountains, causing chaos in the area of thousands of meters. Anyone who hunted in the vicinity would suffer an unexpected calamity. Finally, it couldn't find the thief who stole the red glass tree. It had no choice but to give up and return to its nest. Late at night, two one-armed old men covered in blood and scars appeared outside the gate of Black Bear City. They were the grand elders of the Mu clan and the Jiang clan. Out of more than 20 people, only the two of them escaped. The others all died under the Serpentine Crocodile King. Although they were lucky enough to escape, they lost an arm. This time, they were ordered to go into the mountains to kill Qin Feiyang. It could be said that the Jiang and Mu clans suffered a double loss. The appearance of the two didn't cause any commotion. The two guards guarding the city led them to the city lord's mansion. Seeing the two's miserable state, the city lord was shocked, but he was most concerned about Qin Feiyang's life. The two also vowed that Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei were dead, because at that time, they saw with their own eyes that Qin Feiyang ran in the direction of the Serpentine Crocodile King. After that, they didn't see the two again. It was enough to say that the two were eaten alive by the Serpentine Crocodile King. Although he didn't see the bodies, the city lord was convinced. Because the two's strength was not bad, it was impossible for them to fail. And he firmly believed that the two dared not lie in front of him. The next day, a notice appeared at the 4 city gates. The content was that the real culprit who massacred the Ling clan had been executed and died in prison. It asked everyone to stop talking about this matter. However, it didn't announce who the real culprit was. As for what the real culprit looked like, no one knew. Some people who doubted it only dared to talk about it in private. But once the notice was out, the matter of the Ling clan being massacred was finally settled. Black Bear City also gradually calmed down. But it was only on the surface. In the dark, all the clans were fighting in full swing. But the fights between the clans happened every day. As long as it didn't cause too much of a commotion, no one would care. Time passed day by day. After not seeing Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei for a long time, Luo Xiong and the martial arts hall master started to feel uneasy. On this day, the martial arts hall master came to the pill hall personally to discuss countermeasures with Luo Xiong. After eliminating all possibilities, the two of them personally led people to search the entire city. After searching the city, they went outside the city. But in the end, the two forces turned the area upside down and still couldn't find Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei. This time, Luo Xiong and the martial arts hall master couldn't help but suspect that the two of them might have died somewhere. They might even have been killed by a traitor. But without any evidence, they didn't dare to ask anyone. They could only send people to investigate openly and secretly, hoping to find some clues. But until the people from the martial arts hall and the Danwang Hall came to Black Bear City, there was still no news. In the Pill Hall's guest hall, Luo Xiong was supposed to be sitting on the main seat at the top. But now, a purple-clothed youth was sitting there. He was about 25 or 26 years old. His figure was tall and straight. He was elegant and gentle. There was also an amiable smile on his extraordinarily handsome face. This person was from the Danwang Hall. He was in charge of the assessment this time. But now, only Elder Mo was attending to him. Luo Xiong and Feng Cheng were nowhere to be seen. A moment later, the purple-clothed youth put down his teacup and turned to look at Elder Mo. He asked with a smile, "Elder Mo, it's been an hour. Why isn't Hall Master Luo here yet? If he's busy, we might as well not disturb him. Just go and get the name list and give it to me." This, Elder Mo hesitated for a moment and asked, "Should I go and take a look?" "That's good too. Go and come back quickly." The purple-clothed youth nodded and smiled. Elder Mo got up and quickly went to Luo Xiong's courtyard. Without knocking, he barged in. Luo Xiong and Feng Cheng were sitting on the stone bench in the courtyard. Their faces were gloomy and they were silent. The atmosphere here was especially heavy. Elder Mo strode over and frowned. "What are you still sitting here for? That Lin Chen is about to lose his patience. And the name list for tomorrow's assessment, have you decided?" Feng Cheng said angrily. "We haven't even found Jiang Haoyan. What name list is there? If we can't find Jiang Haoyan in this lifetime, are we going to drag it out like this forever? I admit that Jiang Haoyan's talent in alchemy is unparalleled. However, we can't break the rules because of him. We can't delay the future of other disciples because of him. You are all leaders of the Pill Hall. Do you still need me to remind you of this?" Elder Mo shouted. Feng Cheng glared at Elder Mo. Luo Xiong was still silent. After a long while, Luo Xiong sighed softly and said, "Old Feng, there's still no news of Jiang Haoyan. He must be dead. Let's just pretend that there's no such person." Feng Cheng shook his head and said, "No. He's such a smart kid. How can he die outside? I don't believe it." Luo Xiong pondered for a while and nodded. "All right. Go and look for him again. If you can't find him by tomorrow morning, I can only give the name list to Qing Yi." Elder Mo frowned and said, "Hall Master, Lin Chen wants the name list now." Luo Xiong waved his hand and said, "It's fine. I'll go and talk to him. I'll give him the name list tomorrow. I believe he'll still give us this face. Old Mo, you go with Old Feng." "Yes." Elder Mo nodded. Luo Xiong stood up and walked out of the courtyard. He walked towards the guest hall in big strides. He was frowning along the way. "Bastard kid. When I find you, I'll skin you alive." In the courtyard. Chapter 93. Qin Feiyang didn't know what the three big shots of the Pill Palace were thinking. But he had already come out of seclusion and was on his way back to Black Bear City. After a month of seclusion, the fourth stroke of the Huan character formula had been successfully copied. At the same time, he had also become a 5-star martial master. As for Ling Yunfei, although he didn't break through to 6-star martial master, he wasn't far from it. But when he saw Qin Feiyang's cultivation method, the shock in his heart couldn't be described with words. Copying a stroke could actually increase one's cultivation? It was simply a miracle. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, he wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. In short, in his eyes, Qin Feiyang was an out-and-out monster. No matter what strange things happened, he wouldn't find it strange. The two of them walked along the river as fast as lightning. The beasts and water beasts they encountered weren't very strong, and were quickly dealt with by them. Half an hour later, they came to the place where they were ambushed that night. Oh, bang, bang. Just as they were about to cross the river, A wolf howl came from the forest behind them. At the same time, there were also sounds of fighting. Qin Feiyang's body stiffened, and he suddenly turned his head to look at the forest. Why was there a wolf howl? Could it be Wolf King? Ling Yunfei also turned to look in that direction and frowned. I remember that the snake cave is over there, right? Let's go and take a look. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, activated the Luoyan steps, and rushed forward. Haha, beast, let's see how you escape today. When we catch you, Qin Feiyang will definitely come to save you. At that time, we will set a trap and catch all of you in one fell swoop. After a while, too loud laughter came from the depths of the forest. The sound of fighting also stopped abruptly. It was enough to show that the battle was over. But when Qin Feiyang heard this, his body suddenly trembled. It was indeed Wolf King. And listening to these words, its current situation was very bad. No matter who you are, you will all die today. His eyes burst out a bone-piercing killing intent. Even Ling Yunfei, who was next to him, could feel it clearly. In front, 300 meters away, Wolf King lay on the ground, covered in wounds and dripping with blood. That was not all. Its forelegs were also broken. Lying in a pool of blood, he was unable to move. However, its eyes were staring straight ahead, filled with ruthlessness. There were two young men in luxurious robes. One of them was Mu Fei. The two of them looked at Wolf King and laughed heartily. The other person was holding a wooden stick that was as thick as an arm. The wooden stick was also covered in blood. Obviously, Wolf King's forelegs were broken by this person with this wooden stick. Mu Fei picked up a thick branch and poked Wolf King. Seeing that he was motionless, he immediately gave him a thumbs up and complimented him. Big brother, you are really amazing. You got rid of this beast so quickly. Mu Yang raised his head and said proudly, Isn't that obvious? I, your big brother, am a 6-star martial master. Isn't it easy to deal with a wolf cub? Yes, with your ability, not to mention this beast. Even if Qin Feiyang sees you, he will definitely be scared to the point of peeing his pants on the spot. Mu Fei nodded again and again. Mu Yang laughed and said, Big brother likes to hear this. We brothers are lucky today. It's rare for us to come out, but we encountered it. When we bring it back, father will definitely be very happy. Of course. But we can't give this beast to the city lord. Because he will take our credit. We will directly hand it over to Master Lin Liang. In this way, our Mu family can be considered to have a relationship with Yen City's Lin family. At that time, we will have a meteoric rise. Mu Fei said. That makes sense. Mu Yang nodded, patted Mu Fei's head and laughed. I didn't expect your brain to work so well. Mu Fei rubbed his head and laughed. Suddenly, his gaze turned cold. He looked at Wolf King and said, Big brother, last time I suffered a big loss at the hands of Qin Feiyang and this beast. Can you let me teach it a lesson first? Mu Yang said, Up to you as long as you don't kill it. Mu Fei was overjoyed. He glanced around and picked up a branch as thick as a thumb. Pa! He waved his hand and whipped Wolf King's body. Wolf cub, weren't you very arrogant last time? Not only did you steal the blissful flower, you also robbed me of all the gold coins. If you have the ability, stand up now and meet up with this young master. Hurry up. What are you still lying there for? Come on, you damned beast. He cursed while cursing. At the same time, he crazily whipped Wolf King. This scene was just seen by Qin Feiyang, who had rushed over. Suddenly, his anger was monstrous, and his killing intent soared to the sky. Without a word, the true qi in his palm surged towards the two of them. Jiang Haotian, Ling Yunfei. Hearing the commotion, Mu Fei and Mu Yang turned around, and their expressions suddenly changed. Didn't they say that the two of them had been killed? Why did they suddenly appear here now? To hell with it? Mu Fei hurriedly threw away the branch and hid behind Mu Yang. Even if he's not dead, he's just a 4-star martial master. What's there to be afraid of? Mu Yang glared at Mu Fei and calmed himself down. He turned to look at Qin Feiyang and sneered. To be able to escape from the Sawtooth Crocodile King, I have to say that you're really lucky. Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear, and his face was extremely cold. Seeing this, Mu Yang's eyes also surged with a strong killing intent. Since they were not dead, He might as well finish them off here. Reckless ox fist. He threw away the wooden stick in his hand and took a step towards Qin Feiyang. As he approached, his true qi gushed out and he threw a punch. Wind thunder palm. Qin Feiyang let out a low roar. His arm shot out explosively and slapped towards Mu Yang's fist. Bang. After the first exchange, both of them retreated. 6-star martial master. Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted. Mu Yang had only used a superior martial technique, reckless ox fist. Mu Yang's wind thunder palm was a perfect martial technique. In addition to his cultivation as a 5-star martial master, his palm had the strength of 9 barbarian elephants. However, Mu Yang was able to tie with him. This was enough to prove that he was a 6-star martial master. Compared to Qin Feiyang, Mu Yang was even more shocked. After stabilizing his body, he stared at Qin Feiyang and said in a low voice, "What's your cultivation? You only need to know that it's enough to kill you." Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. His killing intent was bone-chilling. Bang! He took a step forward, and the ground shook. When he took another step, his speed suddenly skyrocketed. Shifting smoke steps. His current speed was 4 times faster than before. Even if Mu Yang's strength was on par with his, he was confident that he could kill him in a second. What a fast speed. Mu Fei, take that wolf and run. Mu Yang's face changed greatly. He roared at Mu Fei and threw a punch at Qin Feiyang with all his strength. At the same time, Mu Fei quivered and turned to run toward Wolf King. Qin Feiyang shouted, "Ling Yunfei, stop him." However, Ling Yunfei acted as if he didn't hear anything. He looked at Wolf King and Qin Feiyang in surprise. He cared so much about that wolf. Could it be that Jiang Haoyin was Qin Feiyang? Damn it! Qin Feiyang cursed and roared. "White-eyed wolf, stand up if you don't want to die." At the same time as he roared, he used the shifting smoke steps and dodged Mu Yang's punch. He took out the Chang Shui and stabbed Mu Yang's right leg. Blood suddenly spurted out. Ah! Mu Yang knelt on the ground on the spot and screamed. At the same time, Mu Fei stretched out his hand and grabbed Wolf King's tail. "This pain, this injury, it's nothing. I can't let little Qin Zi look down on me." Wolf King roared in his heart and suddenly got up. Where the limbs were broken, the bone spurs instantly tore through the flesh and blood, piercing through the fur. Blood spurted out. The pain almost suffocated him, and he almost fainted. But he didn't fall. There was no scream. It suddenly turned around and pounced on Mu Fei, biting off Mu Fei's throat in one bite. Bang bang. Then one man and one wolf both rolled on the ground. Mu Fei died on the spot with his eyes wide open. Wolf King's consciousness was also swallowed by the darkness. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang took out the Chang Shui and hurriedly ran toward Wolf King. Mu Yang took the opportunity to escape toward Black Bear City without looking back. Ling Yunfei next to him was still indifferent. Looking at the man and the wolf, his face was full of disbelief. After Qin Feiyang came to Wolf King's side, he took out a large number of healing pills and bone-replenishing pills, and stuffed them all into Wolf King's mouth. "White-eyed wolf, please don't let anything happen to you." He was burning with anxiety. Looking at the dying Wolf King, his eyes were filled with tears, blurring his vision. "Don't worry, your brother Wolf is bigger than Daifuku, I won't die." Wolf King grinned and fainted on the spot, unconscious. Qin Feiyang was shocked. He hurriedly stretched out his finger and put it in front of Wolf King's nostrils. It was breathing. He was still worried. His hand was gently placed on Wolf King's lower abdomen. There was a heartbeat. Phew! At this time, Qin Feiyang heaved a sigh of relief. With a wave of his hand, he kept Wolf King into the castle. He got up and glanced at Ling Yunfei, walked to the wooden stick, bent down, grabbed it, and chased after Mu Yang. Mu Yang's thigh was stabbed and he was limping. He was not even half of his usual speed. Therefore, in less than 10 breaths, Qin Feiyang caught up. "Bastard! How dare you bully White-Eyed Wolf, I'll cripple you." With a furious roar, he swung his staff at Yi Zichen. Crack! Mu Yang's left leg was broken on the spot. He fell to the ground and ate a mouthful of mud. "I'll treat you the same way you treated Wolf King." "No, I'll pay you back double." Qin Feiyang walked up. His whole body was overflowing with hostility. He swung the stick again and broke Mu Yang's other leg. Mu Yang screamed. The severe pain had already distorted his facial features. Do you know pain now? Qin Feiyang waved his arm and the wooden stick fell, breaking Mu Yang's left hand again. Just kill me. Mu Yang roared hysterically. Kill you? How can it be so easy? I want you to taste the feeling of living a life worse than death. Qin Feiyang was seething with anger. When he thought of Wolf King's miserable state, he wished he could pierce through the sky. Crack! The stick fell and Mu Yang's right hand was also broken. At this moment, he was completely desperate. The person in front of him was a devil. He would never let him go. Qin Feiyang squatted on the ground, opened his mouth, revealing a mouthful of white teeth, and asked with a smile, "Where should I hit next? Can you give me a suggestion?" Looking at Qin Feiyang's expression, Mu Yang suddenly couldn't help but feel cold all over. Chapter 94. After torturing him for so long, it's time for you to vent your anger. Just give him a quick death. Ling Yunfei walked over and persuaded. Does it have anything to do with you? Qin Feiyang asked without turning his head. It has nothing to do with you. Ling Yunfei shook his head. Since it has nothing to do with you, then don't bother. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. He stood up and swung the wooden club at Mu Yang's head. But at this moment, Ling Yunfei grabbed Qin Feiyang's wrist. What do you want to do? Qin Feiyang abruptly turned his head and looked at Ling Yunfei. A cold light flickered in his eyes. He humiliated me before. I want to kill him with my own hands. Ling Yunfei said. He patted his Qinquan bag and a dagger appeared. He grabbed the dagger and turned around. With a wave of his hand, he slit Mu Yang's throat. You. Mu Yang's eyes widened in anger. He seemed to want to say something, but before he could say anything, he fell to the ground and died. How satisfying. Ling Yunfei smiled and wiped the blood off the dagger. He turned around and looked at Qin Feiyang. Just as he turned around, Qin Feiyang grabbed his clothes and said sternly, Do you think I'm a fool? If you think you can soar to the sky after entering the martial arts hall, then let me tell you, you are gravely mistaken. Ling Yunfei said, I think you misunderstood. I really don't mean anything else. Qin Feiyang sneered. Is that so? Then why didn't you do anything when I asked you to stop Mu Fei? If this is the so-called killing sword, what's the use of it? Ling Yunfei's body trembled. An inexplicable panic rose in his heart. He stammered, At that time I was thinking. Qin Feiyang said. Thinking if I'm Qin Feiyang? Ling Yunfei nodded. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips in ridicule and said, Then I'll tell you right now. I'm Qin Feiyang. Jiang Haoyan is Qin Feiyang. In the distance, a cry of surprise sounded. Qin Feiyang suddenly turned his head and shouted, Who is it? Come out. A young man in black rushed out from a bush and ran towards Black Bear City without looking back. Qin Feiyang didn't chase after him. He let go of Ling Yunfei and said expressionlessly, Now prove to me whether you are a sword or not. Ling Yunfei did not hesitate and chased after that person without saying a word. A short while later, a blood-curdling scream rang out from the distant forest. Ling Yunfei quickly returned to Qin Feiyang's side and said respectfully, It's been taken care of, but there's still a group of people in the distance. It seems to be Jiang Wei and his gang of scoundrels. Qin Feiyang said, Do you know? If you had hesitated just now, I would have killed you on the spot. Although Ling Yunfei was also a 5-star martial master and had mastered a perfect martial skill, Qin Feiyang still had absolute confidence in killing him. Ling Yunfei's pupils shrank and said, Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about your true identity, including my mother. That better be the case. Qin Feiyang glanced at him and said, Let's go and see what Jiang Wei and the others are doing. Ling Yunfei nodded and hurriedly led the way. After knowing Qin Feiyang's true identity, he could no longer be as casual as before. In his heart, there was a fear that could not be dispelled. A moment later, Qin Feiyang stood behind a bush and looked ahead. A few hundred meters away, a group of people was rushing over. It was indeed Jiang Wei. The others were all unfamiliar faces. but looking at their clothes and behavior, one could tell that they were a group of hedonistic sons. Ling Yunfei explained, apart from Jiang Wei, the rest are also disciples of small families in Black Bear City. Do you want to kill them? Jiang Wei. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered as he shook his head and said, in the past, Luo Qingzhu and her mother helped me many times in Iron Ox Town. As long as Jiang Wei doesn't provoke me again, don't touch him. So they also know your true identity? Ling Yunfei was surprised. Don't worry, they are more reliable than you. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Ling Yunfei had a bitter smile on his face. He was obviously mocking him. Ghost. When Jiang Wei and his group ran over and saw Qin Feiyang, they were immediately scared and fled in panic. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Mu Fei and Jiang Wei were like this before, and now Jiang Wei and his group were like this too. Could it be that after not returning for a month, everyone thought that he and Ling Feiyang were dead? No. At first, Mu Yang seemed to have mentioned the Sawtooth Crocodile King. The people who knew about the Sawtooth Crocodile King, apart from him and Ling Yunfei, were only the 20 people from the Jiang and Mu families. Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and said, go and capture Jiang Wei. Finished. Ling Yunfei was like a cheetah, rushing out explosively. In a few breaths, he grabbed Jiang Wei and returned to Qin Feiyang. Behave yourself. He shouted coldly and threw Jiang Wei at Qin Feiyang's feet. Jiang Wei immediately got up and went to Qin Feiyang. He smiled and said, Brother Haoyan, long time no see. How have you been? Qin Feiyang quickly took 2 steps back, goosebumps all over his body. He said, answer me a few questions and I will let you go. Jiang Wei said unhappily, what are you talking about? You are my brother. Not to mention a few questions, even dozens or hundreds of questions are not a problem. Qin Feiyang's face twitched and said, you came here in groups, what do you want to do? This? Jiang Wei's face changed and hesitated. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said, Ling Yunfei, drag him and bury him. Remember, bury him alive. Jiang Wei's face turned white and hurriedly said, I'll talk, it's because of Mu Fei. Earlier I received news that Mu Fei came here to find a birthday gift for his father, so I brought a group of brothers and wanted to teach him a lesson, but I didn't expect to meet you. No, it's big brother, big brother. Jiang Wei waved his hand again and again, looking at Qin Feiyang with a look of horror. In his heart, he was calling himself unlucky. When he goes out in the future, he must first look at the auspicious date. Birthday? Qin Feiyang's eyes narrowed slightly and asked, what is the date of Lord Mu's birthday? Tomorrow. Jiang Wei said. Then I have to prepare a big gift for him. Qin Feiyang's mouth rose, pursing a smirk. Seeing this look, Ling Yunfei knew that this person must be up to something. Jiang Wei didn't understand, nor was he in the mood to look, he just wanted to deal with it quickly and get away from this evil star. Qin Feiyang secretly sneered and asked, a month ago, did anyone from your Jiang clan and Mu clan go back alive? Jiang Wei was stunned. Suddenly, as if thinking of something, his expression changed slightly. He wondered, what happened a month ago? Qin Feiyang shouted, drag him and bury him. Ling Yunfei grabbed Jiang Wei's clothes and dragged him to the side. Don't do it, we can talk about it. Jiang Wei hurriedly roared, his face was pale. Qin Feiyang asked, do you want to talk now? Tell me. Jiang Wei nodded again and again. Qin Feiyang looked at Ling Yunfei and motioned to let go of him. After Ling Yunfei let go, Jiang Wei sat directly on the ground and wailed on the spot. His face instantly turned into a pig liver color. What's the matter? Qin Feiyang was shocked. Ling Yunfei looked at Qin Feiyang and said, let's make it clear, I didn't plot against him. Then, he looked down at Jiang Wei again and frowned. What are you howling for? Jiang Wei roared and twitched. He seemed to be in a lot of pain and anxiousness, unable to say a complete sentence for a long time. Ling Yunfei said angrily, what the hell is going on? Can't you explain it all at once? I was burst. Chrysanthemum. Jiang Wei roared, his face almost distorted. Burst chrysanthemum? Qin Feiyang and Jiang Wei were stunned. The next moment, Ling Yunfei burst out laughing on the spot. Qin Feiyang also tried his best to hold back his laughter, His face flushed red. Jiang Wei endured the pain and said angrily, "Hurry up and help me. How can you still laugh? Are you still human?" Cough. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and stretched out his hand. Jiang Wei immediately grabbed it. Then, Qin Feiyang exerted a bit of force and pulled Jiang Wei up. Ling Yunfei glanced at Jiang Wei's pants and asked in confusion, "Your pants are not even broken, how could it be?" Jiang Wei said angrily, "Nonsense, do I look like I'm pretending?" Ah. Ling Yunfei was dumbfounded. He looked at the ground and laughed so hard that he rocked back and forth. It turned out that there was a sharp stone on the ground. When Jiang Wei sat down just now, he might have been sitting on this stone and hit a certain part of his body. With such a small probability, he was still able to encounter it. His luck was truly heaven-defying. "What are you laughing at? Haven't you seen it before?" Jiang Wei roared, rubbing his butt with all his might, gritting his teeth. "To be honest, this is the first time I've seen it." Ling Yunfei's face turned solemn as he answered seriously. Then he couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Bastard! Even you are bullying me." Jiang Wei gritted his teeth and kicked the stone away with all his might, venting the anger in his heart. Ouch! Suddenly, a painful cry came from not far away. The three of them looked at each other. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? There really was such a coincidence. A woman in tight clothes rubbed her head and ran out of the forest in front. She was wearing an exquisite white mask. Although her face couldn't be seen, her legs were long and slender, and her figure was exquisite. There wasn't any excess fat on her body, so it was possible to tell that she wasn't old. The masked woman walked over and glanced at the three of them, asking, "Were you the ones who threw that stone? I can tolerate being bullied by Jiang Haoyan. After all, he is stronger than me. But now, a woman actually wants to bully me. If a tiger doesn't show its might, do you think I'm a sick cat?" Jiang Wei was furious. He took a step forward and looked up at the masked woman in disdain. "I threw it. What do you want?" "What do I want? I want you to eat mud." The masked woman's tone turned cold. She took a step forward and appeared behind Jiang Wei at lightning speed. Following closely, she kicked Jiang Wei's calf. Jiang Wei cried out in surprise and knelt on the ground. Then, she raised her leg again and kicked Jiang Wei's back. Jiang Wei immediately fell flat on his face and fell to the ground, his mouth full of mud. So fast. Qin Feiyang and Ling Yunfei's pupils constricted. Their gazes were fixed on the masked woman the entire time, and had never shifted. But earlier on, they didn't notice how the masked woman appeared behind Jiang Wei at all. It felt like teleportation. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.